In this video, we are joined by a very special guest. We got Drew, the Disney dude, with us today. We're talking all about Tiana's Bayou adventure. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. Up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. Like I said, we are joined by the one and only Drew, the Disney dude. We're going to talk all... What's up, Drew? How you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you guys?
Good. If you could remind everybody before we get started where they could find you on social media.
Yeah, so I think the entire world knows at this point that my main account is X at this point from all my Tiana stuff. But I'm on Instagram at Drew the Disney Dude, YouTube Drew the Disney Dude, and TikTok Drew the Disney Dude, and my X is just Drew Disney Dude. So
perfect. Make sure everybody at home, make sure you follow him on all platforms. His passion for not just Tiana's Bayou Adventure, but for Disney in general is absolutely contagious. Make sure you follow him, support him, and show him all the love. And Drew, it is awesome having you. Appreciate you taking the time to join us, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on, because it's I have so many thoughts on these things, but whenever I go to post something, I'm I've been talking about this ride for 5 months, so it's do I want to talk about this? But this is such a natural conversation, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier for me to get my thoughts out rather than formulate it into a post, so to say. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And Mr. Italiano, before we dive in, if you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. There
he is, George the Italiano. We are all set, ready to rock and roll. So, Drew, let's dive in. Let's start from the beginning. So how did you become, before this whole Tiana thing, right? You were amazing, by the way, with the Tiana Bayou Adventure coverage. You were at the parks, almost every day?
I was at the parks 3 times a week, earlier on. And then once I started gaining some traction with it, and I'm oh, I'm kind of living, one of my friends, he made a comment. He's you're kind of living at the site. And quite honestly, once he said that, I'm oh, I am. I could continue to do this. And then from there, for the last 5 months, that's kind of how it started. But like you said, though, my whole love for Disney started when I was a kid. So this is just a little part of it, but a lot of people know me now for this. So
yeah, absolutely. A lot of people got onto the Drew train during the Tiana stuff. So, but let's dive into how you became a Disney fan a little bit. You know, I'm interested in that. So how did this whole thing start with you in terms of Disney? When did that spark come alive for you?
Or as I say, when did you get bit by the Disney bug?
Right? Yeah, when did Mickey say you're going to come here for the rest of your life, so to say? But it's funny. I always say that I was born in Orange County, California, and now I live in Orange County, Florida. So my family's kind of made the trip across the country. And my love for Disney started out at Disneyland. My parents took me on It's a Small World when I was 2. And I think that they kind of always say that from there it kind of started because they grew up loving Disney, and it's kind of let's take our baby to Disney. But I guess more of in the kind of following projects, so to say, where I kind of really started following the parks. It came with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which I recently posted about on my Twitter, and New Fantasyland, so to say. I vividly remember back in 2011, 2012, going on to WW Magic and going on the forums and checking out the headlines before school every morning. And New Fantasyland and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was when I first started really following everything. And that was oh, this is a Magic Kingdom expansion, and they're moving Dumbo, and Dumbo just soft opened, and what does the soft opening mean? And Mine Train's opening 2 years later. And I definitely would say it's been exactly 10 years now since Mine Train opened, but for this last decade is really since I've been following everything super closely. But in the big picture, my love for Disney definitely started from when I was a baby.
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting, Drew, because I got kind of a similar origin story, I guess you can call it, right? For Disney fandom. I kind of ever since I was little, my parents were taking me to the parks, Disneyland out here in California. And as I got older, I was going on to the Disney forums, the Disney sites, checking out the My Sage updates from outlets back in the day, right? Like really back in the day. And
as you always say, OG, the AOL dial-up.
Yeah, literally AOL dial-up days, you know. And I'm very similar with you, Drew, in that I love following these new projects. I love following the projects. I love following the speculation. Like, what are we gonna get? What might we get and stuff? I find that very, very interesting. So
yeah, I agree.
And for me, oh, sorry, Drew. And for me, really quick, I just want to say, and not even just following the projects, I love seeing the process. Like when you literally see something that has already existed or may not have existed, and literally watching, like, kind of like in slow motion as the clock is ticking, and you see a little bit happening each time that you go, and you see something different that they have changed or added. And then when it's opened and it's like, I can't believe that this is here. Now this is going to be here for 10, 15, 20 plus years. And it's like, now I have to kind of retrace back of what was here before, you know, because it becomes like that, a new memory, you know, that gets added on to your many existing memories.
Yeah. And that's like, that was literally me yesterday going on Tiana's for the first time. Cause like my first ride, I was kind of like overwhelmed processing everything. And then like the second ride, I'm like, oh, that's where Brer Bear was. And, you know, that's where Brer Rabbit was. And it's like, it was kind of weird. I'm like, I'm in the same place right now, and it's been 16 months, and that 16 months has already gone by, but it's been crazy. And like you said, just adding on to what you guys said, I feel very similarly, and I think that's why I've kind of like connected with you guys, and like why we can talk so naturally is because we think so similarly about the park, so it's just more natural that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you took your first ride, you did it twice yesterday, actually.
Yeah, very fortunate, because right now I try to be transparent, and I need to make a post about this on Twitter. But right now, this ride is barely operational. Like, it's bad. It's averaging, like, it'll come up for like 3 hours, and then it'll go down for 4 hours, and then it will come up for 3 hours, and it'll go down for 4 hours. And it's like, we can talk about this more on why I think it's going down. But it's really, really bad. And it
sounds like D23's Q line.
That's exactly why I haven't been to D23 since 2015. But yeah, I mean, it's been really bad operationally, but that's why, like, coming back to your point about getting to go on it twice, I got to go on it twice, which is a miracle, but also at day and night. So my first two rides were the only unique experiences you can get, so to say. And like I said, it was so surreal to finally get to go on this thing in such a similar environment, but also, like I said, so unrecognizable in so many ways, but a lot of the ways better unrecognizable.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Drew, because we kind of had a similar situation out here in Anaheim we had Tower of Terror, and then they rethemed it to Mission Breakout, you know, and it was interesting because it was like familiar because the building was technically the same shape and everything. You go through the lobby and all that, but it was
especially such like a massive structure like that, you know, like it's so prominent, and that's like tying this into Tiana a little bit, like it's so prominent like Splash was, you know. But whatever you were going to say about Tower, I would not trying to cut you off, but I'm just
you're
no, you're fine. I do it all the time.
He does.
My brain never shuts off. I just keep thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yeah, but it feels very much like kind of like the Tiana situation, where it's like this very familiar thing, like you were saying, Drew, this iconic structure you can see from everywhere, very similar to, you know, Splash Mountain. And now here we are with a whole new theme, you know, a whole new tone and energy for this attraction. So first time riding it, would you say, because you've been following it, like you were saying, like for 5 months, very, very closely.
Yeah.
Was there any disappointment for you personally, or was it pretty much what you thought it was going to be, and you came off there like, oh my gosh, this is amazing?
Yeah. So I touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but like I said, I try to be transparent as possible. So like, I know that my experience going into it, I was going to absolutely adore it because I have such a strong emotional attachment to this thing before I even went on it. You know, like 54 visits, 1,000 photos, 100 videos. I know the entire project team on a first name basis. Like I have literally had like a unique experience, so to say, with that. And I'm not saying that to like brag or anything, but like more of like I 100% am biased towards this ride. And I also love Splash Mountain. So like it's literally the exact same structure that I loved, and then getting to go back into that space. But like my first ride, so to say, if I was disappointed, I think I was so like overwhelmed that I was actually getting to go on it that everything was blowing my mind. I filmed my entire reaction, and I don't know if I'm ever going to share that publicly because I quite literally just did that for me. But I was like, holy, you know, like you can imagine what I was saying. And I was just like losing my mind around every turn. And I purposely avoided that awful POV that Disney put out. And I say awful because it's awful. Every single person that I've talked to, they're like, oh, like after they went on it, they're like, oh, and like I've even watched parts of it, and I'm like, how was this approved? Like,
Right.
this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and in my opinion, this retheme is the most important retheme that they will ever do. Arguably the most important attraction that they've ever done, with Princess Tiana being Disney's only black princess and having a black princess attraction. It's an extremely important attraction. It's replacing Splash Mountain, which is one of the most iconic rides of all time. You have to get this right. And you only get one first impression. And when this attraction has already been bashed, not saying that the bashing of it has been appropriate, because I don't think it has been. I think that everything that they released up to this point before the POV was extremely promising, and that's a big part of why I was so excited for it. But when your first impression is so awful, you're just shooting yourselves in the foot. And I don't know if I'll ever understand why they did this. And some of this stuff is off the record, but I know that it was kind of it caught a lot of people off guard, and you guys can imagine who it caught off guard. But yeah, I'm just shocked that they did that. And I can confidently say that the ride in person is so much better. Just getting to, you're fully immersed. And I think that that's like one of the beautiful things about this being a retheme of Splash, is a lot of people are like, oh, Princess Tiana deserves her own ride. And absolutely, I could see, other Tiana rides happening eventually from the ground up.
Right.
But the thing that I loved about Splash is it's 10 minutes long out here at Walt Disney World and 8 minutes out at Disneyland. And the rides from the ground up today are usually 3 to 5 minutes at best. So going into this, I really wanted something. I love longer rides because you feel like you're actually there. And I immediately picked up on it. It really does feel like you're floating down the bayou. Like, it feels so natural. And the video that they released, you quite literally cannot pick that up. The video looks boring because you're just floating. But when you're there in person, it feels real. You know what I mean? So it's like, I could go on for hours about this stuff, but to wrap it all up, the POV is awful. And the fact that their first impression now it's gone. You can't go back in time. Millions of people have seen it. And the damage is done. It's crazy. I don't get it.
It's really sad. It really is. And you mentioned it in your video on Twitter, where they had this camera locked in position.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a very unnatural thing. No one's going to experience the attraction like this.
Yeah. And it's like, adding on to this too, it's like the way the camera is, to your point, I don't even think it's at eye level. I think it's lower because it's rigged to the vehicle so it doesn't fly out, obviously. And like, I saw them testing this camera a few weeks ago, and they were walking the track with flashlights and making sure it was all set up ready for this. And like, I think it's below eye level, number one. And like you said, it's not natural. And I was with Jack, who runs DSNY Newscast, last night, and he's like, that's perfect for like a roller coaster type POV. And I'm like, that's the perfect way to describe this. That's perfect for a roller coaster, but not for a dark ride. And like I said, absolutely ridiculous that they did this. I don't get it.
Yeah, and you only have one chance to make a first impression. And like you said, Drew, this is a very important attraction. It's already
important, yeah.
Extremely. And this thing has been getting so much hate for years now, since the announcement. So you really have to hit a home run here. Like, there are some people that will just never be convinced, and that's on them, right? But at least with people that are willing to, people that have an open mind, you got to lead with their best foot forward, and they really dropped the ball here. Sorry to cut you off, George.
No, you're good. I actually want to go back even a little bit further, because it was something that you had said, Drew, that you said, I don't mean to like brag and everything, but you've been like following me personally. I think you have every right to brag about that, because I feel like you have more relevance to describe the experience right now than what a lot of people are doing online, bashing this thing when they didn't even get to experience it themselves yet. Yeah. So, and I'm always the type of person that is like, I love the destination, but it's also the journey along with it. Yeah. So I love how you got to experience the journey of like literally watching this thing be kind of reborn, in a sense, this attraction, from Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And then to kind of cap it all off, put the cherry on the top, you got to actually ride it, not once, but twice. In Bob Iger fashion, you're not doing it once, you're doing it twice.
Yeah, like, that's why, like, even going back to earlier when I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, I go back and forth on that. Like, am I biased towards it because I have ineffable feelings towards it and I'm so attached to it? Yes, I'm biased towards it, no doubt. Do I also have a better understanding of this attraction than anyone on this planet besides the people that worked on it? Yes. So I completely understand this attraction from its core, every single detail for the last 16 months that has been revealed. Yet I also understand that exact reason directly aligns with me being biased towards it. So that's why I'm just telling people to go into it with an open mind, because like I said, it's like I don't know what's right and what's wrong. Like I said, my understanding and knowledge of this attraction is up here. It's one of one. But that directly affects my feelings towards it. So it's like I go back and forth on that, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like to use Mario Kart as an example, I can ask George. I talked so much crap about that attraction going into that attraction because I'm like, come on, why are they creating a racing ride that's like slow? Like it didn't make any sense to me, right? And I would watch the videos, I would look all the pictures, and I didn't. I was like, oh, this is really underwhelming. I ended up riding it, and I came off that thing eating like the biggest bowl of crow ever. Like I was like, I love Mario Kart. Now George doesn't.
Now, and then I started out saying, "Oh my gosh, this is Mario Kart. This takes me back to my childhood. I'm going to absolutely love this." And then I came off the ride eating a big bowl of crow because I think it completely sucks.
Right.
So now it's
Right. So it was like two opposite things. But the point of what I was trying to get to here with this was like you really don't know until you actually experience it. And there's a lot of people kind of declaring a lot of like what's the word for it? Like confirmations. This thing sucks, or this or that and the other, without even writing it. And it's like you just don't know until you go on it. Even if you watch the video, like you were saying, Drew, the video that Disney released was terrible. I mean, I've seen so bad. I mean, they should really be in there.
I'm not trying to cut you off. I just
You're
when I
fine.
get thoughts, I want to say them. So it's like if they gave me one ride without seeing a single thing, I guarantee you I could have done a better job with my phone with one take than what they did going on multiple times with their team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
What makes me extremely sad is I know that the park's social media team, I know them, they are my friends, like they are fantastic people. They were not the ones who had the chance to do that POV. So Disney's own social media team, the people that they hire to promote these parks, weren't even allowed to do their jobs on top of the POV being released and blindsiding the people that worked on this ride.
Oh yeah, if I seriously, if I worked on this attraction for years, blood, sweat, and tears on this attraction, you know, all that love and work put into that, and then Disney drops that POV, I'm furious, man.
And honestly, I've been saying this for quite some time. A lot of people have been saying this for quite some time. Disney's PR really needs to step up their game of how like things are like managed, and it's just a shame that the people who have worked on this and yeah, you're right, OG. Like if I worked on something and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then it is showcased in the manner of how
that POV was, I would be, I'd be mad as a hatter, you know. Yes. And for me, it's I got to stick on brand here, but I feel that Disney has their heart's in the right place, but sometimes I don't know where their mind's at, where it's like they have that conceptual idea of saying, okay, let's us be the ones to release the first ride through footage of this ride ever, because when have they ever done that with any other attraction? You know, what better way to do that with Tiana's? And then the execution of it is like, that's where it gets lost. Well, I think the idea of being the first to release the footage was actually a smart strategy.
I agree. Agree. Yeah. So I have thoughts on this. And like I said, I like this being Disney's only Black princess. It's extremely important, especially when they add the fifth key. You know, I'm trying to look at this from Disney's perspective, right? And I'm like, they have the chance here to reveal their own ride exactly how they want to. They have access to the ride. They can go on it as many times as they want. They have the Imagineers. And they had every opportunity to reveal this attraction in the most professional way possible, and it didn't happen. And what drives me crazy is we just see the We Call It Imagineering series launched, which is the most professionally produced, beautiful thing they've done in a long time. And then weeks later, this happens? Like, who isn't communicating here? And like, I don't want to say his name just out of respect for him, but I recently met the vice president of the park's social team and like the PR department, and he's extremely nice and he's extremely smart and he knows what he's doing. And I'm hoping to see him soon and kind of be like, what happened here? Just like I just don't get it. And I want to understand it, because I think all of you guys would agree that like at our heart, we're a fan of the parks over, you know, anything. And when you see something like this, it kills you because we want to enjoy these things, but it just fuels the fire for the haters. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that constructive criticism is a bad thing. I'm not saying negativity is a bad thing. But when there's pure and blatant, just like you said, where these people are just making claims and it's almost like they're turning their opinion into fact, that's where it kind of crosses a line, you know?
Oh, absolutely. We made a video. We made a few videos lately on Tiana, and I've said that too, where it's like criticizing the attraction is not a problem. It's okay to not like a certain aspect of it or whatever, but there are people that I feel made up their mind 3 and 4 years ago, and 100%. They basically could have wrote the review 4 years ago and it would have been the same, you know. And it's like that's very close-minded, you know, like you were saying, it's this hater kind of mentality. And you're right, when Disney drops the ball with the video, you're putting the log on that fire, basically, right? You know, to
that's what kills me. It's like they knew how high the stakes were. Right. And when us as fans can pick up on that so easily just from seeing stuff online, I feel that the company should have that understanding, you know, and just like the We Call It Imagining series, like I just mentioned, that series is so well done. Why weren't those people put in charge of capturing this attraction in its most beautiful light possible, releasing the most beautiful video to represent Tiana in this incredible light? Like, I think the world would have loved that, and it would have made everyone happy to see it professionally. And also just the fact that there's only one time to ever document. This is my documentation mind going here, but there's only one time that you ever have a chance to document an attraction when it's brand new, when everything's perfect. So you have that historical reason to it, but it's also the perfect way to reveal it to the world and to highlight the work of hundreds of incredible people at Walt Disney Imagineering and Walt Disney Animation Studios. And to see them not have their work represented, like you said, in the right light just kills me as a fan of these parks at my core.
Well said. Well said. I want to ask you, Drew. I don't know if you've seen it. The video that POV in particular, is getting ratioed like crazy.
I have. Yes, I've seen that.
You know, and we talked about that. We did a video earlier today. We released a video today about how my argument was kind of like, I don't think that the ratio is necessarily an organic thing, right? Like, I don't think the normies are jumping on here. I
guarantee you there's bots on that, and there's people like literally just seeing stuff online. They open YouTube, they click dislike, and they close it. It's just like, oh, what's popular right now?
Right.
But I do think there is a lot of it that is organic at the same time, just in the fact that like the POV is awful. Like personally to me, I'll never really dislike videos just because I don't do that. But like, I could see why someone would dislike a video if they didn't like the video as a video. You know what I mean? Like literally just for that reason, regardless of Tiana, regardless of Splash Mountain, just the video on its own is not a good video. So if you dislike it, I'm going to understand that.
Well, yeah. And yeah, exactly. It's great. I made the exact same point in our video today, where it's like, you know, we're all content creators, right? And YouTube doesn't give you like a reason why someone disliked it. Like there's no like explanation for each dislike. And I made the argument too, Drew, where it's like they could be disliking the poor quality video, not necessarily the attraction.
That's 100% a valid dislike in my opinion, because like you said, as creators, part of our responsibility is to create the best content possible. Right. So we give our audience a reason to tune into us. Without that, there's no reason, especially when there's thousands of creators in the world today. Give someone a reason to watch you. Give someone a reason to tune into you. And when the Walt Disney Company, nonetheless, is the one that you don't want to tune into, yikes.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, George.
And also, too, Disney lost out on even more opportunities into making that video, because they could have, not even just with the ride, but they could have went through the queue line. Yes. You know, there's a lot of fine details that, honestly, I have to say, I'm a huge Splash Mountain fan. I love Splash Mountain, but if you put that queue line back to back with Tiana's, there was a lot of empty spots that Splash Mountain had that they filled in all those nooks and crannies with Tiana's, and I felt like, again, it was an injustice, kind of almost an insight to the attraction itself. It's like, this is your work. Let them showcase all the hard work that the Imagineers had put into it. And I don't understand it. I mean, I would love to know from Disney standpoint, like what went down, it's almost like it's like that old game telephone where it's like you spoke to one person, it just like went down the line, and the last person got the last bit of information, but it was like nowhere near the amount of when it first started. That's what it felt like to me. But Drew, actually, speaking of the queue, can you take us through like your day going on through the attraction? Like what was your first step of like, how did they go operational wise? Which I know majority of the time, speaking of operational wise, the ride isn't doing so well right now. You know, it's still going.
Yeah, right now I'm nicknaming it Tiana's Bayou Nightmare right now because
that's. But for the times that you were able to go on it, what was your experience with that? Like,
yeah, so so like before I say that, but like to your really quickly before your point, it's like the first episode of We Call It Imagineering was all about Tiana. They literally could have done a We Call It Imagineering about this entire ride finished, and then say, hey, we talked about this before. Here's the final product. So, like you said, I would still love for them to do that, and they still could do that, but I think it's too late at this point. But going to my day yesterday, so I couldn't sleep. Quite honestly, it was like when you used to get excited for Christmas as a kid when you believed in Santa. That was like I literally could not sleep. But it was really cool because like my buddy who I was with, my friend John, he invited me. That's the only reason I was able to go. But we got the 10:30 a.m. time slot. And when we were checking in 90 minutes before, so we were there with the 10 a.m. slot, which was the first time, but they were giving us the same color wristband. And I was like, very quickly picked up that even though we had a 30-minute later time, that we were still going to get to go in with them because they only have so many band colors and they kind of just group you together, like in certain, like from like 10 to 11:30 or 10 to 12 gets the same color type thing. So I was like, all right, we need to get on the monorail and go now because the ride's going to be open. I guarantee it. Sure enough, we get back there at 9:45, 45 minutes before our window, and the ride is open. And these logs are empty. I'm freaking out because like the walls are down and they have hedges here. And I'm like, oh, wow, we actually get to walk back here now. And the queue is empty. The Walt Disney World ambassador team, I don't know if you guys know them, Serena and Shannon, they are angels. They are like the perfect ambassadors for out here. And I saw them.
I don't know them personally, but I do know of them, and they're phenomenal.
They are true ambassadors of the Walt Disney Company and Walt Disney World, and I cannot say enough good things about them. They are phenomenal, and I love them. I just met them for the first time the other day when the walls came down, and they saw my Tiana's food shirt, and they gave me hugs, and they went on the ride. They're just so sweet. Like they embody happiness and love, if that makes sense. And they were out there. The queue line was empty. Like I have vivid memories of just walking up and seeing the barn, and the radio show was blasting. That was the first time I ever heard the radio show. Like after like researching it for months and like to actually hear it and look up at the speakers and hear audio coming out of that, I'm like, whoa. But like there's no one in line. There's absolutely nothing here. And my friend Johnny is an ECV, so we didn't walk through the entire line, but it actually benefited us because shortly after is when people started to pick up that the ride was open, and that, you know, when they tell you show up at 10 a.m., it's not accurate. Like these are like the things that I picked up on over the years. You kind of just go and it's open because like the cast members are there already anyway. You know, they're not going to block it off till 10. If the ride's running, the ride's running. It's more of like once you check in and go back, you get to go on. But we basically, they have like a little ECV thing and they take you through the exit. And we walked up. There was not a single person in the load station. It's funny because like people are like, you deserve to be one of the first people on. I'm like, it's okay, I'll get on the ride. But I quite literally ended up being one of the first guests ever on the ride, and that's insane. Like it's great. Like I think I only saw one log go out before us, so my personal thought is that I think we were literally in the second log ever for the general cast preview.
See, and that was so big of you, because if someone said that to me, you deserve to be on one of the five, I'd be like, I know.
It's like in my mind, would I love to go on the ride early, just mainly to avoid spoilers? Yes, absolutely. But I also try to look in the big picture of life and just appreciate that what I've been able to do has impacted people, and just to be grateful for that. Like a few years ago, would have been like, hell yeah, get me on the ride now. Absolutely. But like, as I've kind of taken a step back, and I've kind of taken a step back because of this ride, like it's really changed my impact, like on my view on life and everything. Like I could talk about that for hours, not even about the ride. But just walking into the load station and like, I'm going to keep saying it, but seeing such a familiar yet unique environment, and just even like the simple addition of the Tiana's. You guys, I guess we're going to be talking about the entire rides. I'm going to spoiler mode, but
we're
going to be talking about everything. But there's really cool Tiana's Foods cranes. Like they're like hoisting the crates for like the food and stuff. And those are actually over the cast member positions where they dispatch the logs. So they took a space that had nothing there before and actually added to it. But it doesn't affect like where the guests walk around, like getting out of the logs. So a very simple addition, but it looks really cool. And like they there was like an arc splash, like when you're coming down the line, you used to be able to look out over into the load station, but they actually covered that with like stained glass windows. And I haven't been up there yet, so I don't know if that looks better, but like that was different. And they painted like the area yellow to match the barn. And like I didn't love the yellow at first, but it somehow, like, I don't know if this makes any sense. It somehow screams the 1920s. And I don't know if I'm just associating that color yellow with the 1920s literally because of the ride. It's very possible that I am. Well, like, the load station felt very sharp and clean, and you could tell that it was like there was some love put into it, whereas Splash Mountain kind of felt 90s. I don't know how such a familiar area that was barely changed feels new, but it does. And just the simple additions of the new things kind of make it felt more sharp, I think is the word. But going back to the operational issues, there was like a 2-minute period where the boat's going to move, and I was like, oh no, we're going to get stuck here, and it's going to go down before anyone gets to go on the ride. And the cast member was super sweet. She's like, yeah, like the characters have unique lines and go on it multiple times, and you'll hear them talking to you different times. But then the boats finally started to move, and I bolted into row 1, and I was like, here we go. And because no one was on the ride, like they dispatched us immediately. Like we pulled down the bar, like I barely pulled down the lap bar, and we were going out. But there's some really cool props around like when you first go out, and it's a simple area. Like they got rid of the Brer Frog animatronic, obviously on the lift hill, but they added another cast member checkpoint just to, like, make sure everyone's seated still right at the base of that first lift out of the load station. And that's where you go up. And shockingly, I never thought I would say this, but my favorite part of the entire exterior after the walls have came down and going on it twice is the water tower. The water tower is staged so perfectly. And just how that one little space that they had, like if you look back at splash photos and where they chose to put the water tower, because that's the one flat spot that they had for it.
Right.
It's crazy how it works so well.
You know, George, you said that yesterday when we were on Theme Park Wizards live show, where you said the water tower. At first, you didn't like the idea of it, but then when you saw
when I actually saw it after they completed it, I thought it's actually growing on me. It actually fits quite well, especially since they don't really have a significant placeholder like at the top of the mountain. Like for Splash Mountain, it used to be Chickapin Hill with the log, the stump. But being that they don't have that, I feel like that the water tower kind of fills in a little bit of that gap. You know, it's like, and especially seeing it through two different perspectives. Like if you're standing on the outside of the ride and you see the whole thing, but then when you're on the log going around and you get that eye look to it, it's like, you're right. Like that's the one spot that they could have put it, and it's like it couldn't have fit much better.
Perfect. Yeah, but like literally what you just said about the perspective, I was just about to say that. We think so similar. This is why I like you guys. But just when the walls came down and getting to see like the base where like they have like the vines and the moss looks really cool, and just like it's very prominent and it feels like it's supposed to be there. And like the Tiana's Foods like logo looks cool. It's very sharp. I keep coming to that word. It's very sharp. It's simple, but it's effective and it looks nice and professional. But the really cool thing is like when you're going up on that lift, you're on that incline, but the water tower is standing straight. So you're on an incline, if this makes any sense. You're going up the lift hill, but you're seeing the water tower as it's standing there. And it looks extremely tall because of the perspective that you're coming at it from. And you can like, it looks towering just from the way you're coming out of the load station. And like a core memory I have for my second ride last night is when we were floating around, like George mentioned, is right before we went up that lift into the mill house where the first Tiana animatronic is. I looked up and the way that orange lighting is at night, it's perfect. Like that is the one thing about the exterior of this retheme that I'm like, at first I was like, why is there a water tower here? But it's very quickly turned into my favorite thing during the day because of the staging from the first lift. And at night, because the orange lighting is so unique compared to the purple, it just pops. It stands out, and it's just freaking gorgeous.
That's amazing. Now, I want to touch upon real quick, Drew. Okay, so that first lift hill, the first animatronic that we see is Tiana. Yes. Beautiful animatronic.
The way that they improved that whole mill house is just incredible.
It's incredible.
If you want to say something else, I know you were gonna. I don't want to start talking a lot before you say what you're gonna say.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that. One of my biggest concerns going into this attraction was because we heard a lot of like story beats, kind of like with the like the co-op and the salt mine and stuff like that, right? And one of my big concerns going into this attraction was like, oh man, I really hope they don't like over explain stuff.
Yes.
And when I was watching, I'm curious to get your take on this. When I was watching these videos, I comb through so many of these videos now. I was really relieved at how it kind of went back to just classic Disney attractions. It was very simplistic dialogue, but it works. It was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want the
I could not agree more. Yeah.
Right, to over explain this co-op thing and all that. They didn't do that. It was like, hey, meet me at the party. Loved it.
Yeah, we were worried that as soon as we sat into the log, they would have had to hand us like an Encyclopedia Britannica. It's like
here's all the lore.
Yeah, here's the Walt Disney Imagineering guidebook. Your time starts now. Yeah, it's funny that you guys mentioned this, because back in my YouTube video in January, this was right around when I first started following this ride, like going back to the very beginning. It was around the time when NOLA.com, Mike Scott of NOLA.com, got the first tour with Ted Robledo. That was the first time where we really realized that this thing was a lot closer to its opening compared to that late 2024 timeframe. And once I started going through that a little bit, I was like, I think I need to address that this ride's not going to be about the co-op, and that this is another, in my opinion, marketing choice that was not great. That I understand why they did it, because in the earlier days of this attraction, if you look back a year plus, they weren't ready to reveal those big things like we got recently, right? The marketing for the attraction in the recent months was actually phenomenal, in my opinion. We got all the meat and bones and potatoes, so to say, right? All the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But early on, when they didn't have that stuff yet, they were leaning into the backstory of where Tiana is in her life currently. And that's where I think a lot of this negativity came from, is because people were quite literally misunderstanding what this attraction was going to be. Personally, to me, I never misunderstood it, because I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Tiana's opening a business. And I feel like Tiana's always been more of like relatable princess, so to say. Like, she's an entrepreneur and family and restaurant. Like, that's stuff that people can relate to.
Yeah.
And I think that they just leaned into it way too much, wanting to talk about this ride rather than kind of hinting at what the storyline was going to be, so to say. But that's, like I said, back in January, I talked about this. Like, I think my exact words were, I think it's got people talking about if the storyline is going to be boring, but the ride itself is going to be a critter-filled journey into the Bayou. And like you said, that's exactly what we got.
That's exactly what we got.
That's a big part of why I was so excited for this thing, is it quite literally is Splash Mountain 2.0. Splash Mountain, it was a musical critter journey, right? It had a simple story. Rabbit wants to trick a fox and a bear. Like, it wasn't anything crazy.
No.
It was, but because it was classic Disney over 30 years, people got to love it, and they have emotional attachments to it.
And there's people still to this day that still don't even get the whole notion that Brer Rabbit was trying to trick Brer Fox and Brer Bear. They were just going, they were listening to the music, they were having fun with it, the thrill of the drops 100%. And everything. That's all they cared about.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, it's because it was around for 30 years, and social media didn't exist then.
Yes.
You didn't experience things for the first time through your phone 35 years ago.
You had to actually go and experience yourself. And I said that too. I feel like social media, in a way,
social media is so bad, and I know
it cripples so much.
It's going to sound so hypocritical, because everything I've built is on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
But social media is so bad for this world.
It is.
And that's, I could talk about this for hours too, but that's quite literally why I've positioned my page to be positive and professional, because I want it to be something that I don't see enough of. But we're not here to talk about that. But
that's actually pretty. That's beautiful, actually. I like that. I like that a lot, because I've actually taken a little bit of a step back from Twitter a little bit, because it just has gotten so bad on that app. It's
I don't even remember where we were talking about the backstory, but
backstory.
The dialogue is so simple. But a few months ago, Steve, who runs WW Magic, he's got some actual legitimate sources. He's had WW Magic running longer than I've been alive. Wow. He is like one of the veterans that I kind of look up to, and I'm fortunate to know him now as like a friend. I've gone to talk to him. He's a fantastic guy. But a couple months ago, he was kind of like, they're kind of trying to, even though it still is the thrill ride with that 50-foot drop, they're kind of trying to transition it to be more of something that kids can go on once they're 40 inches tall. And as a result, we're going to see some more simple stuff. So going into this, I knew that it was going to be more of like, these characters are quite literally just explaining what's going to be happening. Like, oh, Zydeco Band of Critters, that's what they're doing. You know, Tiana is inviting us to a party. Like you said, it starts off immediately in the Millhouse. But the thing is, though, in that first We Call It Imagineering episode, Pasquale, one of the show programmers who I just met recently, he's a ridiculously talented, super kind in person. He literally said in that episode that Lewis was going to be explaining where the music was coming from. What does Lewis do in the ride? Explains where the music is coming from. So this stuff has been out there. And that's why, like, I think that I have benefited from following it so closely, and just you guys as well. You guys know this stuff. Is whenever this stuff is publicly revealed, we see that because we follow these parks. But when you get someone who hasn't followed this ride for the last 15 months because they love Splash Mountain and they've ignored the ride, then they're like, oh, what is this? When the reality is, it's been right in front of us the entire time. They told us exactly what this ride was going to be. A critter-filled journey with music. That's exactly what it is. They delivered on what they said it was going to be, you know?
Right.
So it's like, I feel like my understanding of it has been perfect, so to say, from when we started getting the meat and potatoes of it, so to say, and even with the backstory. But like the queue line is so fun. It's such a vast improvement, and there's like 90 minutes worth of music here that was all led by Terrence Blanchard, and Terrence did Louis the Alligator's trumpet work in the film, so he came back and he got to play the trumpet again in the queue. And like we heard last night, I didn't get to hear it in the morning because, like I said, it was empty. But last night when I went on it for the second time, it was down for hours, so there was hundreds of cast members, and they were doing their best to accommodate us. So we waited in line for about 30 minutes, and I was fine with it because I got to hang out with my friends that I was there with, and we got to hear some of the music, and it adds so much kinetic energy, and it really feels like a natural and authentic New Orleans courtyard with that radio show. And it somehow made me feel just a little bit better about like the barn sign being awful quality and like the murals being cut off at the top, like the little things that I didn't love. But then when I'm focused on the music in the queue, do I really care about that barn anymore? And I'm not saying that those little details don't matter, because they do. They need to change that Tiana's food sign. They need to maybe add a couple Mardi Gras banners at the top to cover up the top of the mural so it's not cut off. Like such minor things, you know, but like those things do matter. I'm not saying they don't. I'm not going to overlook the things that I don't like, but the radio show is it's a gem. And going into it, I was kind of like, this is going to be like Jungle Cruise, but Tiana in New Orleans, and that's exactly what it is.
Oh, I love that.
Just the fact that it's like 90 minutes long, and you actually can like have something to look forward to. And there's New Orleans classics, so like I'll get to know those songs because I've never listened to New Orleans music before. Like this is when I've really started following it. But it also has the songs from the movie, so people who know the movie, well, that's for them. But then for the Parks fans who will go on this over and over, they'll get to know the New Orleans songs. And that also introduces us to a new culture, which I think is super cool. Like, I want to go to New Orleans now. 6 months ago, would I say yes to New Orleans? No, I wouldn't care. But it's opened my eyes to like so many cool things. And it's so fun.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too, I think a lot of people need to remember is this is a different theme. They rethemed Splash Mountain, right? So I talked about this with George recently, where it's like a lot of people are complaining that it's the energy is maybe different than what we had for Splash and what have you. And it's like, well, that's whenever you retheme something, the energy is going to be a little different, right? Like, for example, like with Tower of Terror Mission Breakout, that's completely like opposites. You know, you have that slow build up for Tower and the craziness for Mission Breakout. And for this one, like Walt Disney World's, Splash Mountain was a little bit more sunny. You know, you had the blue sky. It was a bright kind of cheerful thing. This is a little bit more nighttime based attraction. And it's different. And I know it's going to be hard for some fans to get used to, but different isn't necessarily bad. And it's kind of cool. And if you're going to retheme it, it should be different. I don't want it to feel like a retheme. Yes, I want it to feel its own thing.
And that's something that I've talked about with so many people lately. It was Jack at DSY Newscast, and Jack and I are super close. And I'm not going to talk about like too much with like stuff that you would care about, but he was kind of like, no matter what Disney does, they can't win here, right? If you completely destroy Splash, every single part of it, and build it up from the ground up inside that show building, people will say, oh, it doesn't feel like Splash Mountain anymore. But then in that first drop into the Bayou, where they actually beautifully repurposed those trees, they repainted them, they added new lighting, people are like, oh, it's cheap, it's reused. But to me, I'm like, oh, that's from Splash. I love that. And the show lighting team, I cannot give enough credit to the show lighting team. They did such a freaking good job making this feel like a real Bayou. And like I said, you cannot convey this in video. It feels so natural. But coming back to your point, Splash was bright inside there. Yeah. And there are certain scenes in Tiana's that are bright where like they're highlighting the animatronics because they have to light up the animatronics that they're spending millions on, But like the one part of the attraction that there's one part at the beginning that's dark, and there's one part leading up to Tiana that's dark. But it feels so real, and that's the word I keep coming back to. It feels like a Bayou adventure. If I were to use words to describe it, it would be a Bayou adventure.
Well, Drew, it's funny. For months now, I've been saying I basically want that beginning part in Pirates in Disneyland, that
Yeah.
Bayou when you pass the blue Bayou.
Mhm.
I was saying
that is it.
Right.
If I could describe the part leading up to Tiana sitting on the log, that Tiana solo scene, it is that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Weird. Yeah.
I like that because that's what I wanted. I wanted that on a big scale, and I think that's what we got. The funny thing too, Drew, is that you mentioned like people were criticizing, saying when they reuse the trees or whatever, it's kind of cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Disneyland Splash Mountain was like almost all reused. It was all the American Sings animatronics. So it's like, okay, it's a little bit of
facts and logic. In the world of social media, people don't like that. So
you know what I'm saying? I mean, it was all reused pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Florida's version because I know you guys. It came out a few years later.
I think that I don't know like all the stuff about like the original Splash, but like Disneyland's was all reused. I think Walt Disney World, it was just the same characters, but they were new, like built. But I'm not certain on that. I'd have to check that. But to your point, all reused, but it worked though. Here, it works because Walt Disney Imagineering has this new tried and true technology, and that's lighting. Lighting is so effective. And one of the Imagineers that I've been talking to recently, he's kind of like, it's so nice to see people that appreciate us as artists and interpret it in the way that we want it to come across. If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Now I want to ask you, because there have been criticisms, Drew, of like the amount of animatronics in this attraction, because we obviously had a lot more with Splash. Mm-hmm. We have more advanced figures, but there's less of them. Yeah. When you wrote it, was that an issue, or did the other technology sort of offset the animatronics that we might have lost?
This is actually a fantastic question, and I'll probably talk a lot here because it kind of gets throughout the entire ride. But I talked about this in my Twitter video, and we've talked about it already. One of the first things I noticed was some of the scenes are more spread out. And I think that first part of track, when you first come in, you turn the corner, and Lewis is right there. I love that there's actually nothing there before that, because it allows him to be revealed in this jaw-dropping moment. And going into it, I had an understanding of what the scene was going to be staged like, because we got that concept art in 2022. That was like the first final concept art we got. Like, there's concept art and there's concept art. There's true concept art, and then there's a final concept that is made as art, if that makes sense. Some pieces of concept art are quite literally done as art to inspire the Imagineers. And then there's art that is commissioned when an idea is made final, if that makes sense. So that was the first piece of art that was a final concept. It was set in stone, and the art was made after the concept was final. So we knew, or at least I knew, that that's exactly what we were getting. But this scene was laid out so much differently than I thought it was going to be. And it was actually something that I was wondering for months, is because once they started saying that these characters are going to talk to us directly, I'm like, how are Tiana and Lewis going to be next to each other talking? But then once I went on the ride, they staged it to where they're apart, and it's perfect. And I'll get to the animatronics, but like I said, when you first turn the corner, Lewis is right there. And he's at the back of the track to where your log is coming head on at him. So you are looking at him, and he is looking at you. Wow. And I absolutely lost my mind when I saw Lewis. It didn't help that his mouth was broken, but like that was still like the first like, whoa, this is one of the biggest figures they have ever made. He is moving. That is an alligator. He is right there. And he was talking, and I was just like in awe of what I was looking at. 5 months of my life dedicated to wanting to see these things, and there he is. And then I was so focused on him that the log starts to turn. Bam! There's 6 giant critters right in front of you, and these critters are big. Like,
what?
I thought that they were going to be like maybe like 6 feet tall on like that little like dock kind of thing in the concept art,
right?
But they actually made them big so they fill in the scene.
Interesting.
And that's an interesting creative decision, because that's another thing I was thinking about, is like these critters aren't big. So how do you stage them? I'm going to use the word staging a lot, because staging is huge for these rides. How you like position things to how they look from a guest perspective.
Right.
The way that these critters are staged, the log comes around the corner and they are pointed towards you on an angle, but they are big, like they are prominent, they are there, and they are moving. Like the animatronics themselves are very simple, and their movements are very simple, but they are so beautifully well done with like the finishing touches, if that makes sense, like the instruments and the fur. But even though the movements are simple, the fact that there's 6 of them together is awesome, and it feels like they're an actual band. And it doesn't just end there. That right after that, Tiana's there. So Lewis kind of introduces like what they're doing. They're playing Zydeco music, and then you see them playing the Zydeco music, and then Tiana's like, "Oh, I like them. I want them at the party." So that one scene just tells a little story right there within a giant story. But once I saw how they staged it, I then understood the creative vision. I thought they were going to be all together at the beginning. You know, Critters here, Tiana here, just like the concept art, Lewis here. And I was like, well, that's a lot for one spot. What are you going to do after that? Like to fill the space? But they used the space because of the way they staged them. And this is the stuff that no one talks about, is the creative decisions on how to take, oh, yes, we love this idea. We want this idea. And that's why that concept art was made, because it was finalized. But then how do you stage it to where it works? And it works really well.
That's fascinating. So you kind of go through the scene, and you go through. So you see Lewis, and then you see the critter band.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's fantastic.
I know that what you asked me was about like the animatronic total count. So like we knew going into this ride that Splash had 68 around figures out here at Walt Disney World. Disneyland had like 100. Disneyland was stacked. So like I never had that emotional attachment to Disneyland because I live out here now, and I totally understand for those people that lived out there and went on it. I've heard from them like, yeah, I love that there was 100 like it's just insane to think about 1, 2, 3. Like think about how long it takes just to count to 100. You know, and those are all physical figures. So like that is a giant loss, even more than here. But even like going after that, there is a little section that's very simple there. Without animatronics, like the way, like that scene is really good, but then after that there is a little bit of dead space, which I talked about in my video, where you're literally just floating down the bayou, but the song is going to take you there from the movie, and the lyrics in that song are going down the bayou. Nice. What are you doing in the scene? You are going down the bayou. So when I talked to Ted Robledo yesterday morning, I said, was that your vision? And he said yes, because of the music. He said, when we're working with music, we wanted to make the choice kind of like, his exact words were, music is tough. And my takeaway was that if these scenes are too close together, the music then clashes. So his creative vision was to spread it out a little bit to have each performance sound right. And then I'm like, oh, I get it now. But if I hadn't covered this attraction, I would have never been able to talk to Ted yesterday. So just like those 54 visits led to that one moment, and I can now appreciate this attraction that I care about so much even more.
That's awesome. And one of the things too, Drew, that I actually one of my big criticisms with Universal stuff is they don't really let you breathe, right? When you're on these attractions, you're on Transformers or whatever, you just name it.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's sensory overload from beginning to end, right? Mm-hmm. And I like the old school Disney stuff a lot because they do, like we were talking about Pirates, it's that slow bayou thing, right? You know, it takes forever to get to that first drop.
Yeah.
I feel like with Tiana's and what you're talking about, what you're describing is kind of a return to form a little bit.
It feels very classic Disney. And one of my buddies I was talking to, he's like, it's almost like they went back to their 90s form. And I love that. I'm like, it's been very, because like I've actually had people turning to me like, what do you think? Like I'm actually talking to a lot of people about this ride because I've been known as the Bayou guy kind of so much, so to say. And I've been very fortunate to have so many different opinions because I love that. I love talking to people. I always say, just if you go into it with an open mind, I don't care what your opinion is. And that's the truth. I don't care if you love it. I don't care if you hate it. Just Absolutely. Go into it with an open mind. Give it a chance. But to answer your question, I know we've been talking about this for a while now, but I think you guys know how passionate I am about this ride. The animatronics, the way that they have been staged, fills the ride. Could there have been more? Absolutely. And I was literally in the shower earlier thinking about this, but I think it would have been very cool if you guys remember that one of the very early pieces of concept art we got with Tiana and Naveen in the boat.
Yeah,
I think it would have been phenomenal if in that one part that people are complaining about, where it's literally like 15 seconds before you see Tiana, it's pretty sparse. But to be fair, it's beautiful and there's fireflies twinkling above you. So it's like, it gives you a second to breathe and kind of appreciate. I literally caught myself looking around me. And there's not much to look at, but it's the closest I will ever get to going down a bayou.
Yeah.
And that's what I want from these rides. But I would have loved that concept of the Naveen in the boat to be going alongside with you, and then you meet Tiana. So like, could one more animatronic there change the entire attraction? Absolutely. And that's where I can understand different people's opinions, because does it bother me and do I still adore the ride? Yes. But with the technology would an A1000 of Naveen rowing a boat alongside you, going up to Tiana saying, hey, she's going to send you along now to keep going? Would that have been one of the coolest things they've ever done? Absolutely.
Oh, I love that.
They have the space there for that, you know? And it's like, I can't take full credit for that idea because I was basing it off of a piece of concept art we got, But like to see that concept not made and then see a space where they can implement a Naveen animatronic, and people love Naveen. He doesn't even talk in the ride. When they said they were bringing back Bruno Campos, that was like one of the things I didn't understand at all about the ride. But little things like that. Are the animatronics incredible? Yes. Are there a ton of them? There's 40. Like for a Disney ride in 2024, 40 figures is ridiculous. Is there a lot of them? Yes. The finale is packed with animatronics. Could there be more? Absolutely. So am I happy with a yes? Could they have gone the extra mile to make this attraction so good that no one could complain about it? Yes. Would I have loved to see that happen? Yes. Am I going to pretend I understand how budgets work and how attractions work? No, I'm not. So I'm going to be happy with what we got.
Well, and us as Disney fans in the Disney community, we also have to take in consideration whatever we got right now of the opening doesn't mean that's what it's going to be in 10 years down the road. They could always add more stuff to it. I mean, look at Pirates of the Caribbean. The attraction inspired the movies that inspired the ride again. They added Captain Jack Sparrow. They added Red. The Haunted Mansion. Walt Disney World recently added the Hatbox Ghost. Yeah. So it's like they can add anything in there at any time. So when people go in there and say, "Oh, well, we don't have this, we don't have that," it's not set in stone. Walt Disney himself didn't want the same attraction to exist over and over again through decades.
He didn't want a giant museum, and these things are ever evolving, ever changing, and that's a great point, George. Like you guys literally just got a Hatbox Ghost in the Haunted Mansion. How old is the Haunted Mansion? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But like I think that some of the people I've talked to with this, the attraction overall is phenomenal. I think for me, it's more of these little things. And some people would say, "Oh, it's just a little thing. Why are you worried about it?" But this is the Walt Disney Company, and this is Walt Disney Imagineering. For over 70 years now, Walt Disney Imagineering has taught us to care about every single detail. That's what made Disney, Disney. And we would not be talking right now without that. Disneyland, I've said this before, Disneyland was original from the very beginning, right? That's what made the Walt Disney Company what it is today. So without that originality from the very beginning and Walt going after that, we wouldn't have these IP attractions now, And that's a big thing of why I love Tiana's Bayou Adventure so much, is because they made over 20 original characters for the ride. You know what I mean? We don't see an original song, 40 figures, 20 of those being original outfits for a ride anymore. You know what I mean? That just doesn't happen. But unfortunately, all of that stuff has been overlooked because it replaced Splash Mountain, which I think is extremely unfair. And I love Splash so much. But like, I love this ride so much. And I'm happy that I think not just me, but like everyone can experience this now if they want to,
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I thought was really clever, I'm curious your opinion on this, Drew. I was thinking, because we also have the laughing place where you go down and then the big mushrooms and we have like carrots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, how are they going to tie this into Tiana? This is going to be a hard one,
Yeah.
I actually thought it was, and some people don't like it, I understand, but for me, I like the concept. They took Mama Odie, her magic. And then they took this scene and they were like, okay, well, we'll have her shrink you down. I thought that was a clever story device. I think it's also not something that's overly complex. It's very easy for like the normies and, to digest that concept. Shrinks you down.
No pun intended.
Right, exactly. Digest, exactly. It shrinks you down, and then you get big again, and you go over the big hill. So I thought it was really cool. But there are a lot of criticisms with that scene. But what were your thoughts on that overall concept and how it's executed?
Yeah. So again, I'll come back to me knowing what to expect. I knew this was going to happen going into the ride, and I haven't talked about this yet, but I was praying it was not going to leak. I found out from someone who walked the track a couple weeks ago that there were giant frogs. I unintentionally found that out. Would I have liked to have gone into it blindly? Yes, but it was actually something that I was thinking in my mind for months. I never talked about it, but like when they said that we were going to see frogs playing music, I'm like, frogs are little. How are they going to make an entire scene out of frogs? Then once I was told this, I'm like, oh, they made the frogs giant. So I think this is just, I'll try to find it out eventually from the project team because they can't talk about a lot of stuff, but I think asking something about that we have seen as a guest is fine. I think if I had to take a wild guess, Ted Robledo, the creative director, said, how can I bring frogs to life in a way that they aren't little so I can make this a scene in a band performance? And then that led into Mama Odie's magic, making us as small as a frog. And I haven't seen anyone talk about this, but it was actually in the Disney Parks blog article from a few weeks back with that first photo inside with the 4 frogs. Those are the frogs when they're normal size and we are normal sized. And they are right off to the left, right before we get shrunk down. So that is the teaser for what's about to happen.
Oh, that's interesting.
So Mama Odie is up here doing her magic, and I will say that screen looks phenomenal. The use of that screen there is quite literally exactly what I was expecting. It has that dimension, kind of like what we've seen over in Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure.
Right.
And she's up there, she's stirring her pot, and there's like some effects like coming down. And when you first go down this drop, it's a very, very simple effect. But like we've been talking about, lighting, the show lighting team, it doesn't have to be fancy. It kind of comes back to what you were saying with like that classic Disney. There's a light that comes directly down above you. It's like 3 lights. I looked up when it happened. It flashes on you. You go down, and there's no lights in that drop, just like in Splash, but they added sound effects here. So there's speakers on the sides now, and they follow your log, and it sounds like magic. Like if you could picture something in your head that sounds like magic, that's what it sounds like. And it's almost like you're.
I just did right now, and I could picture that. Yeah,
exactly. It's like you're being sent through a teleport, and then you're rushed out, and there's giant mushrooms right around you. And this, I'll come back again to the staging. You don't see these frogs immediately. You don't know what's happened. They actually use audio to tell you what's happened, and then you see Mondo the frog. So the storytelling is brilliant because it's done through audio, and Tiana and Lewis are like, where'd they go? Because Mama Odie shows up. Tiana doesn't. We're trying to find music and go to a party as soon as possible, right? Tiana isn't aware of this. And you can hear them loud because they're giant and we're little. So their voices are like booming over you. And even like the sound design to that point, you can tell that they're big and they're above you, if that makes sense. Like you can tell that we're small. And it took me a second to realize that, oh, we're little. But like going into it, I knew we were going to be made little. I just didn't talk about it because I didn't want anyone to see this. And I'm so happy it did not leak, because this is like the wow moment that they kept a surprise the entire time. And the fact that this did not leak is a miracle. I'm so happy it didn't leak. But like I talked about the staging, you turn the corner, Mondo the frickin' frog. I cannot. I'm not just saying I love Mondo. Like Mondo's a great guy and he's one of my favorite creators. But like this character, he's like Lewis the Frog, where you just look at him and you just want to laugh. Like even right now, just talking about him, he's making me laugh. But he's just like drumming away and he's just there. And I was like, oh my God, there's Mondo. Because he's like 5 feet tall.
No way. He's that big?
Wow.
He's like when you're sitting in the log, he's like above you a good foot.
See, and that's the thing, Drew, is that I had no idea when you watch these videos. I had no idea he was out here. I thought these frogs were maybe this big.
No, so like if I'm sitting down right now, if I had to take a guess and that animatronic was next to me, it'd be right up here.
Oh my gosh, that's
like,
crazy.
These are full-sized animatronics, and their movements are very simple. He's just bobbing his head back and forth and playing the drum. Like his mouth doesn't have articulation, so to say, like Tiana does. But he's just a frog playing music. So why does he need to talk? And he's just there. He's just happy. And that's right before the drop into the laughing place. So this is like the former honey scene where Brer Rabbit gets caught in Splash Mountain, right? And Brer Fox is kind of teasing him like, I finally got you. But Mondo is in that same spot. And I've noticed, this is also something I want to ask the creative team, is if they took the locations of the animatronics in Splash and used that as a template for Tiana's. Because in a few places, not throughout the entire thing, but in a few places there's animatronics in what I picked up on, or at least think so. There's something that you were looking at in a same spot. And I think that they took the parts that this team on Tiana's liked from Splash and said, oh, we want to put something there too, because it worked before. So why not do it again? You know what I mean? But Mondo looks so freaking cool in person.
Wow.
And he's right in front of the vehicle. So you get the focus on him. And this is when you really realize that you're the size of a frog. And then you go down that one drop, and like that drop doesn't really make sense there because you've already been turned into a frog. It's kind of just there from Splash. But there is a little criticism here that I will understand. And they've used this one frog performance to fill up the entire laughing place scene. And the entire laughing place scene is very, very big. It's very open. That was one of the parts of Splash Mountain where you could tell how massive of a show scene this is. And you can still feel it in Tiana. And I wouldn't say it feels empty, but this was the one part where I was kind of looking around and I'm like, I want to look at more here. So there could have been more done here. I think maybe adding, I don't know how much these animatronics cost, but like if this frog band was 6 frogs instead of 4 and there was 2 more there, it would have been perfect.
Oh, okay.
But so Myra the frog is on the right side and she's got like a flower, and I was on the right side of the vehicle, so I was locked onto her, and in my video I was like, Myra. But like On the left side are the other two, and this is where I think the staging, they did the best they could with what they had to work with. But unless you, and this is where the POV will not catch it. So this is, again, the POV is awful. You have to, if you're on the right side, this doesn't matter where you're sitting, you have to look on a 90-degree angle to your left to see the other two frogs, which is Felipe and Isabel. And they're there and they're moving and they're big as well. But like I said, there's 3 frogs in this scene that fill up the entire part. And then that's where there's fireflies that are kind of like, we're going to the party, and that leads you into the drop. So I can see some like feedback there about it feels a little empty, and 2 more frog animatronics would have really filled it up and given everyone something to look at, because I don't know if everyone's going to look over here and see these figures, because they're kind of like, I feel like when you're like with Lewis, like I talked about at the beginning, when you're coming into Lewis, like he's right there, you see him.
You can't miss him.
Whereas with this, you have to be looking for these frogs to see them. And you're, like I said, my eye on my first ride went to Myra because she was in front of me. And I didn't notice the other 2 until my second ride. So that's kind of one of the creative decisions where, do I understand why they did what they did? Yes. Does that make it good? Not necessarily. But what I will say is I don't know if I want to, have you guys seen the bottle effect of the fireflies, or was that not visible in the POV?
No, I did see that in other videos. Other like people that have written it. So I have seen that.
A lot of we haven't talked. I think I've talked about it a little bit, but a lot of this attraction, it is timed to your boat. You are a part of this experience. You are not spectating what's going on. You are a part of it, and they are aware that you were there. And there is a giant bottle, and this firefly flies. You couldn't see this in Disney's POV. And my friend John, who I was there with yesterday, said, I just watched the POV, and it is absolutely ridiculous that one of the coolest moments of this ride is not in that POV. But there is a giant bottle, and these fireflies fly through the bottle, and their face gets giant. And it's just a humorous moment, because it's like this little firefly, and it's like, whoa! And it's like coming into the bottle. And it's just one of those little things where it's like someone had a vision and they wanted to add some fun to it. Yeah. They did it. And seeing like the fireflies and the princess and the frog, it's very, very, it's like, it's Ray's family, because Ray's family is still alive. And they're there, and they're looking at you, and they're bouncing along, and this giant bottle, and one of them just pops up with this giant goofy face. But
fantastic.
It was so cool. And what I will say about to kind of wrap up like the critter bands before we talk about the finale is, when they were talking about like the Zydeco music and the rah rah music and the Afro-Cuban music, I was like, are these going to be original songs? But they took the songs from the movie and they made them original renditions in that style. So the second you get into the laughing place, you're hearing Afro-Cuban music, but it's dig a little deeper. So it's something that you know, but it's in such an upbeat vibe even more than the film. And I love that, because, and that's why, even though that scene is a little bit empty, not empty, but empty, the music is so good. And that's like when I talked about to Ted, giving that song its moment, from the second you get into the laughing place all the way to the top of the drop, it allows you to actually hear almost the entire song, because that's a couple minutes of the ride. So getting to have a song that we already know and love from the movie is awesome. But when you turn it into an Afro-Cuban music, not only is that authentic to New Orleans and it brings authenticity into this attraction, but it's also original in a way. And I thought that was really cool. It's super upbeat and you just want to dance to it. And that's clever. It's so cool. But I will say, the Mama Odie screen at the base of the lift hill, it really is not good. Because like we've talked about, everything in this attraction is timed to your log. Right. So the thing with the drop, or at the base of the drop, before you go up the lift hill, is that's one of the few places in the attraction where you will actually stop, because there has to be that clearance for each sensor to say, okay, we can set up another boat now. Right. And there's basically like leaves that uncover, and then Mama Odie's on the screen because she's still giant. And she'll talk for like 5 seconds, and then the leaves close. And I'm like, oh, now what? Whereas like with the vultures with Splash Mountain, if you were sitting there for a few minutes, like these vultures were sick to look at, and they're like laughing in place. Like that was like the moment of tension, where it's like, if like, and there's a giant, I didn't even talk about this, but there's a giant Tiana and Lewis on a screen on the right. And that screen is brilliant.
Right. And really quick, not to interrupt you. I was actually gonna bring that up because I wanted to get your opinion on it, because
I love that part.
Okay. I'm glad because I wanted to get your opinion, because just based off of watching it through a video, and I wanted to get a perspective of someone that actually got to see it in person. When I first saw it, it kind of threw me off. Now, this could just be me because of seeing Tiana and Lewis in a CGI format.
Yes.
And I'm so used to seeing them as the 2D animation.
Mhm.
So it kind of felt a little bit off-putting to me, but I
Yes.
wanted to get your opinion on it because you actually got to see it in person.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this, but like I haven't talked about it at all. But before you get to Mom Odie, backtracking a little bit, before you see the fireflies in that bottle that I talked about, before you see Mom Odie and Juju on the screen, on the right side, right past Myra, there is a giant screen, and this is after Tiana and Lewis find us, and they're like, "Oh, they found a band." Tiana, this is one of my favorite lines of dialogue, but Tiana says something along the lines of, "This is the tune that I've been craving," and just like Anika Noni Rose's voice is just so perfect in this moment. She nailed that line delivery. But like George said, this is the first time we've seen Tiana and Lewis animated in that 3D animation. And it did throw me off a little bit because not only are they animated in 3D, but they're trying to come across as massive here. So their faces are like plastered against this screen. And like I'll send you guys this photo on Twitter. It made me laugh. But like Lewis's nose is like right up to it. And it is a humorous moment, but
Yeah.
it's going to take time for people to get used to seeing these characters as animated in 3D. And I was like, whoa, if we were to get another Princess and the Frog movie, this is what they would look like. And I don't know if I like that. I prefer them as 2D. But for the ride, it works, because that's the best way to make them like look like they're massive and they've found us in this little frog cavern. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in person, that screen is very cool because that screen adds to the story. There's no other way to convey Tiana and Lewis through a screen. If that makes sense. Like you can't have a 25-foot tall Tiana animatronic. It's quite literally not possible.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm picturing Tiana and Lewis crawling down, getting on like their knees, like, oh, there they are. We found them. But that screen is very cool, and it's a great way to bring digital media into the attraction. It works.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and it actually brings opportunity. And I don't know if Disney's going to do this or not. But it brings opportunity because one of the big criticisms with this attraction is there's no Dr. Facilier, right?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I have to be very careful about what I say because it would cause people to kind of have an argument. But
okay,
all I will say is I believe the decision was made to have a next chapter story because of the voodoo. I think this attraction is after the movie specifically because of him. I think that choice was made to get away from that.
Fascinating. Okay, so you kind of actually might have answered my question with that, but my idea was actually because there are so many screens in that scene, I was like, that's easily swappable now. Yes. You can do a Halloween version and have Facilier on the lift hill.
It'll never happen though.
Because of the voodoo.
Yeah, and even if you go back to Disney's article from 2022, Mama Odie in the movie, Lewis literally says it. I think he says like the queen of voodoo. In Disney's article, she's now the fairy godmother of the Bayou. They don't even use that word anymore.
Interesting. Okay.
But quite honestly, I don't talk about this because no matter what I say, it's going to piss someone off. But deep down, I know that they decided to do a next chapter story because of him. And that's what nobody realizes. They didn't just decide to do a next chapter story to do a next chapter story. No, that is their card to say, oh, he's dead.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Okay.
It's fascinating. Okay, so we're not getting no Halloween time.
Yeah. I have absolutely zero inside information on this, but I would not be shocked if he's not in the Mickey's Not So Scary stage show this year, or if we see that float disappear from Boo Bash. Or not Boo Bash. That was what's Oogie Boogie Bash. Like if he just quietly disappears one day, I'm not going to be shocked because we know that they are being very sensitive to what the Walt Disney Company thinks is inappropriate or insensitive, so to say. And if they are already drawing the line at we don't want him in our Tiana ride, then why is he acceptable in a show and a parade? You know what I mean?
Which makes sense because I remember even during the production of the film that they were having some issues even trying to create the villain itself before Dr. Facilier became Dr. Facilier. They were going through many different ideas that a type of like witch doctor kind of female was going to be like then they went to Dr. Facilier. So there was even a lot of backlash even back then. So now actually thinking of it, now that you say that, it actually does make sense.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I've quite literally never posted because I don't want to cause World War III.
Yeah.
But my personal belief is that the decision to have Tiana's Bayou Adventure after the movie was to get away from him. They didn't want him that much.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we have that Mama Odie, right? And
Mhm.
that's the one screen that doesn't
So
really
yeah,
work.
because it's like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like if you were to take like an L shape, like almost like a little valley,
Right.
there's like a piece of show scene, and I don't know if this is exactly where the vulture sat, but there is like a piece of rock work. And when your boat goes under that, that blocks the screen. So on our first ride, when we were at the base of the lift hill, we passed under her and she talked to us for a few seconds because it's triggered by the boat. But then we were just sitting there and I was looking up and half of it was blocked. And I don't know if you guys have done Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, but in that pre-show where Glenn closes Nova Prime is talking to you,
Mm-hmm.
if you were at the very front, you can only see the top of her head. And that's exactly what this was, but you're on the ride. And it's one of the most important moments because, like I said, this is one of the only places where you're actually have a chance to stop for a while. And that screen just does not work. If that screen, and Mama Odie is giant, but if that screen, like the Tiana and Lewis screen is big, it works because it adds to the story. If that Mama Odie screen was across where the vultures were, across the entire top, and it had those same effects like the previous Mama Odie screen, like with
Right.
like the glowy magic, it would have been incredible. But when this piece of rock work, the show set, quite literally blocks what you're supposed to be seeing, on top of her only talking to you for a few seconds, I was very disappointed by it.
Do you think that it would have been more efficient if they had the screen more up on the ceiling, as if Mama Odie is looking down like
Yes.
through a hole,
Yes.
sort of kind of
100%.
like the how they did with the Haunted Mansion, like with Haunted Holiday when Jack
Yeah,
is
with
looking
Jack.
down
Yes,
on you.
yes,
Yeah.
that would have been cool. Like almost like a kind of like with the FSU like little gopher animatronic that popped down, but like kind of have like a nod to that with like something above you where it's like you're looking up and like that's a great idea actually. Instead of you either have the screen flat in front of you, like on a curve, or right above you. And if she was this is actually a phenomenal idea. You just gave me an idea, George. So I said that the flowers open to reveal that she's there. If those flowers opened from above you with like a 20-foot screen, that would have been one of the best moments in the entire ride.
And that would have
Because,
given you such a feeling of being so
yeah,
small.
because you wouldn't see her at first because it would reveal, and then she would talk to you and like point, like imagine if she tapped, like, "Hey, I'm gonna make you big again. Go." That actually would make the attraction a million times better. So, is the idea good? The creative idea there? Yes. Is the execution there? No. And that's where it comes down to because it's so close to being perfect.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
So
interesting.
close to being perfect. But like I said, I think it's like the Mama Odie screen, the one before, it's perfect. I have absolutely no notes there. I love that one. But when you get to the 50-foot drop, like that was the moment of tension on Splash Mountain. And it has these incredible vultures, right? It was so iconic, like their laughs and like the eyes looking at you and the ominous vibe. And I'm fine with it being a party vibe now. But another thing too is like I thought those bottle lanterns were going to be from the base all the way up, but they're only at the top when you see the animatronic, and the rest of it is where the mist is. And the mist looks okay during the day, but it looks much better at night. Like on the night ride, I was like, okay, this actually looks good because there's a light at the top of the drop shining down, and the mist comes in from both sides, and it looks like there's light shining down on you.
Oh, cool.
And it's the closest thing that you could get to in the movie when she says, "Open up the windows," and it kind of opens up to reveal the sun coming through with like the birds. I don't know. My brain is blanking. But in the movie, the birds that are dancing with her when they open the windows, that is the closest you can get to that sun effect through the mist. But it's only at nighttime. So, what I have loved for there to be like with your idea, the screen more prominent to where you can actually see her. Yes, with the bottle lanterns. Should there be bottle lanterns on this entire drop, changing colors, twinkling? Yes, and even the bottles being added with that screen being there, I wouldn't care about the screen if the bottles were there twinkling. But when there's no bottles and the screen's disappointing, that's where I'm like, this scene just does not hit, if that makes sense. It's just not there. But the thing that saves that scene from being quite honestly awful is the original rendition of Dig a Little Deeper, because you have something to sing along to, and then you see the animatronic, and she's like, "You're going to the party," and she says, "You'll get there in no time, guaranteed." Instead of "Blue skies and sunshine, guaranteed," it's the original dialogue with her classic "guaranteed," and then you send down. So like the top is really fun, but even then, you have an A1000 animatronic, and you only see her for 5 seconds.
Wow.
So that's where I come back to the budgetary decision. Do you put a Mama Odie animatronic there, right? Or do you put the money into the bottles in the screen? And that's
So,
where
that's We got to make choices.
I think I would have preferred to see Mama Odie giant on a screen, like George said, because it fits the story. Have the bottle lanterns going up, no animatronic, and then just have dialogue of her talking to us, because at that point she's still giant. And if we're the ones being made normal, then we're not going to see her normal until the finale or after the finale, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like little creative decisions there. You can see how if some decisions were made differently, I would consider this the perfect attraction.
Okay.
But that'll lead us into the finale.
Yes.
In the
Yes. Let's talk
finale-
about that.
And before you get to the finale,
Yes,
because it kind of
absolutely.
ties into the oh no, you're fine. The triple threat that I feel for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, since seeing it from the beginning with the even to the POV, despite of how horribly bad it is and everything, but is something that I did take out from it, and it was the triple threat of this attraction, and that is the animatronics,
Yes.
the lighting package, and the music. For me, those are like the triple threats that basically is the heart and soul of this attraction. And I feel that Disney did those three elements very much.
Oh, they
justice.
absolutely. That's why in my video, when I kind of paused a little bit in my video on Twitter, and I said they delivered, I was kind of contemplating what to say, but then I'm like, they did deliver, because this is exactly what this attraction has been advertised as: a critter-filled journey as we go into the bayou.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what it-
and huge respect and shout out to PJ Morton. I mean, that finale song, absolutely love it.
Dude.
Love it.
And what's crazy is when I met PJ, that was minutes after he went on this ride for the first time. And I could tell that he was just so proud of what he had just heard. Because it's one thing for me to go on this ride for the first time and be excited, but imagine writing a song like what?
Oh,
I like whenever I meet people that I want to meet, I kind of blank out a little bit. Like it's kind of like your brain is like not processing what's happening. But I do remember saying to PJ vividly, I will never forget this. I said, when I've been taking pictures of this ride, if my hand shakes a little bit, I'll delete that picture. But you had the pressure of writing a song that'll be heard by millions for decades to come. And you had to approve that and send it off and be happy with it.
I got
don't know if
chills
I
right
could ever-
now.
I don't know if I could ever do that. And he looked up at me and he said, damn, you're putting the pressure on. Like, whoa, like I almost feel like I made him think about things that he had never thought of.
Like I felt good about it now. Oh, now the more pressure's on me now.
I can confidently say that this song is better than I had thought it was going to be.
Oh, me too. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And the cool thing too about PJ is that I told George this on the video we made like a week ago or whatever with that Imagineering video where he was going through the
that was
attraction.
it's crazy because like that was the day I met him and I saw that being filmed on the outside and I was like, there's PJ. And little did I get to know that 5 minutes later I'd be shaking the man's hand. But
That is absolutely wild. What an honor too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I have to say for that song, and this is where it fits in well, that because this whole thing was for Tiana to not only just throw a party, have the music and what have you, but it's also to promote her company, her foods. And when I heard the song, it took me back to when like those commercials with those jingles that like just have that snappy tune that it's like it gets to the point of what they're trying to sell to you. It's like, hey, I wanna buy a pack of spearmint gum just because I heard that cool little jingle. It's like,
I'm sorry. We're doing this. I just got a message from Pasquale, the show programmer. He said, I'm glad you liked it. So it's like,
oh,
nice.
It's just so surreal, man. Like even as I'm talking to you guys about this ride, I'm getting messages from people who poured their heart and soul into it. And he's saying, I'm glad you liked it. And this is his baby. This is his ride. So it's like, I don't even think I've fully processed the impact that I've had on this project team, but I'm sorry. This is the stuff that I haven't processed yet. It's like, even knowing it's happening, I still can't accept it. If that makes any sense.
That's incredible, man. That is absolutely incredible. And the thing too, it's like, we were talking about PJ Morton and stuff. It's like, he seems like such a genuine dude.
He is. He was, I think that night, the people that I was with, there was like, he doesn't have a lot of time. So like, just, hey, let's grab a picture. He wants to say hi to you because he's seen your stuff on Twitter. But he doesn't have a lot of time. And he posted on Twitter later that night, I made it to New York. So I literally think he was here for 2 hours. He went on the ride, filmed that Imagineering episode, say hi to me, and he was gone. And I was like, whoa.
What? And they said they said that he saw your stuff on Twitter?
Yeah. So when he was on the ride, he went on the ride, I think, twice. I saw him the first time just enjoying it. And then I can't remember which order it was, but I saw him enjoying it. And then I saw him filming it. And there's a bridge here. This is one thing that I haven't talked about yet, but The reason why this has been a once in a lifetime moment for me is because of how accessible this project site has been. You can access this ride from almost 360. When the walls go up at Dino Land, the walls go up. I can't document that.
Yeah,
like
sure.
everyone's asking me what's next. I can't document the Encanto house being built because I can't get back there. With this, I can stand on the bridge and say hi to the Imagineers because I'm right there. And when PJ was writing, I said, "Hey, PJ, congrats, man." He's like, "Oh, hey, I've seen your stuff on Twitter." So it's like I've been able to have conversations with these people while they're on the ride because of how accessible it is. But that's something that I haven't talked about. It's accessible, and that's allowed me to do this. Like there's little things that have allowed me to do what I've done, if that makes sense. And that's why I'm like, this really was a once in a lifetime thing. And it's crazy.
It's a very unique set of circumstances.
Yeah, but he was so cool. He's very down to earth. You can tell that he's just a real guy, you know? Like you can I feel like when you meet someone in person, you can just instantly pick up a vibe on their energy of who they are. And I could have talked to him for hours. Like we just connected, like our vibe and who we were in person. But I think that he was just extremely proud of that song, and he was kind of overwhelmed like I was yesterday because that's his song. Like and what's crazy is he wrote 6 songs over the course of a year. So even like that decision, like which one do you go with? You know, like what lyrics are right, what fits. It's crazy.
That's wild.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah, because we were watching this video and I'm like, because, you know, with Disney stuff, like Disney promotional stuff, you can kind of, when they get like a celebrity or whatever, sometimes it comes off a little like scripted and stuff like that. I was telling George, like with PJ, it felt like he was like,
no, that was just him. Yeah. Like even I finally watched all the videos that I was avoiding because I went on it. Like I was like, even videos that I posted, like I was writing my captions beforehand as drafts in preparation. And when these videos dropped, I downloaded them, I attached them, and I sent them, and I closed it. I had my hand over the screen when I was posting videos. People were like, "How are you avoiding spoilers?" I'm like, "Because I've been prepared for it." But I finally went back and I watched the videos that Disney posted, and he's like, "What's up, guys? It's PJ Moore." Like you can just tell he's real. Like, he's talking to the camera, and that's him. But I 100% agree with you. I could not say enough good things about him. And this song is everything I wanted it to be and more, quite honestly.
Yeah, I give kudos to him because, especially as you said, like he had to choose between out of like 6 different songs, like of which one. I mean, I have a hard time of like which T-shirt I want to wear during the day, let alone like have to pick a song that's literally going to go on an attraction that's going to have a permanent mark. It's honestly like going to get a tattoo. It's like you have to like
leaving a tattoo on Disney history. Yeah,
right. Unbelievable. So that finale scene.
So the finale. Like we've been talking about the song for the finale, but what about the finale?
What about the finale? So
this finale is my main hope for the finale going into it is that we would have the characters we know and love from the movie,
right?
The IP side of it, with every single critter, and they did that. Now, there is one thing about this finale that I cannot look past that is driving me crazy. Is it still the best scene? In my opinion, that finale scene is the best scene Disney has ever done. I would want to live in that scene if I could. Like, if I could spend an hour in there and just admire it, I don't think I would see everything. It's that perfect. Or not perfect, because I said it's not perfect, but it's that good. Now, when you first come in, you see Charlotte and Eudora. Eudora is Tiana's mom. They are beautiful audio animatronics. They're not A1000s, but they're gorgeous. Like, they are there. They are on this rail. They're right there. This is where it's not perfect. On the right side, there is space for there to have the king and queen, which would be Prince Naveen's parents as animatronics. And there's one other character. Give me one sec. There's 3 characters that I wanted to have as audio animatronics on the right side.
Big Daddy?
Big Daddy, yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you. My brain is not working entirely. So they are there, but they're on a screen. And they're with some of the family and friends of New Orleans who have been invited to the party in the story. So no one's going to realize that they're there. I didn't even see that they were there on my first ride.
Wow.
But they have the space to put a Big Daddy animatronic in Naveen's parents right there, which would have Charlotte and Eudora on the left and those 3 on the right as animatronics with everything in front of you. And it's so close to being the perfect scene. It just didn't happen. And like I'm looking over at these screens and like, is the animation beautiful? Yes. Did Walt Disney Animation Studios do a fantastic job with it? Yes. It's not the animator's fault. It's probably not the creative's fault.
Yeah.
But the fact that there is kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Naveen in the boat, when you see the space for the potential and it does not live up to its potential, that's where I'm like, oh, it's so close. Like, you know what I mean?
Now, speaking of Naveen, because he is there present in that scene. Now, I could only go by again with the video, and well, I couldn't do that with the POV, but
because it's funny because like that part of the POV, it's literally locked.
Yes, and his placement of where he's at, you can't.
And it's the most important scene in the entire ride.
I'm
sorry. Whatever you were saying about Naveen.
So speaking like of his placement, do you feel like they placed Naveen in a good spot, or do you feel like that they should have had him a little bit more closer up front where he could have been more visible, where you don't necessarily have to look for him?
Yeah, so very good point. Naveen is not entirely visible. So Tiana is front and center. She's in this stunning original gown, and this is something you can't pick up on video, but in person, this thing is bedazzled. It sparkles, and her movements cause it to sparkle. So this finale scene, like I have a video of it on my phone right here. I'm watching one of my things from earlier. Like that gown is gorgeous, and I understand why they placed Naveen where they did. It's because it's her husband, right? Like he's going to be close to her, performing next to her. But I didn't see him on my first ride until we got stopped and I looked back. And I'm like, oh, there's Naveen. But he still doesn't talk at any point throughout the ride. And at D23 Expo in 2022, they said they were bringing back Bruno as a voice actor. He's not in the radio show, from what I heard. He doesn't talk in the ride. They cut the boat scene. What happened? And that's something that I haven't seen anyone talk about, but it's something that I need to talk about. Why is he not in this ride more? I understand it's Tiana's Bayou adventure and it's her business, but it's her husband.
Right.
You know? And people like him. He's in the parade, the Festival of Fantasy parade. He's in the stage show out here, Mickey's Magical Friendship Fair, whatever it's called. Like, he's a great character.
That's fascinating. He's in Magic Happens out here in California.
Yes, exactly. Like the animatronic, like I'm watching the video, like it's an incredible animatronic. Like his suit, like he looks sharp. It's a fantastic animatronic. But like you said, watching this video, he's behind Tiana, and I actually don't mind that placement because when you look at her, if you know where to look, you will see him directly behind her. And I think it's appropriate to have a husband and wife next to each other like that. But Gritty the rabbit, one of the critters, and I love the staging of Gritty here. I understand the choice, but the rabbit is sitting on top of one of like the posts, like the staircase, but it kind of blocks him a little bit. And it kind of like, there's so much happening here, you know, but I wanted there to be a lot happening here because this is the party. This is the entire story. We're going into the bayou to get these critters. So it only makes sense to have every single critter here. And we do. But to not have the animatronic of Big Daddy and Naveen's parents, the king and queen of, I think it's Maldonia. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too, is in the movie, we barely see the king and queen of Maldonia. So it would have been incredible to actually bring those characters to life in the ride and being like, this is who they are, right? Because we've never seen them before, and we still don't see them here. I really don't count this as seeing them.
Wow.
And when they were talking about, I could have sworn at one point they said that they were all going to be physical. And I don't know if I misread that or if someone misinterpreted something, but I will say my only complaint or my only feedback about the finale, but if you watch the POV or watch someone's POV who knows what they were doing, on the right side, there is a walkway. There's like a little gazebo, and it feels natural. It's beautifully placed. The set design's gorgeous. The lighting is gorgeous. But we could have had them staged looking at us on the right side. And that's the difference between, is this scene great? It is great. I'm not going to say good and great, but this is the difference between great and the greatest scene ever done. Would I still say it's the greatest scene ever done? To me, yes, because I have that attachment to it.
Yeah.
Like, even in the movie, though, people love Big Daddy because he was just that happy, jolly, fun guy, right?
Yeah.
And if he would have been there holding a beignet in his hand, that would have been a huge.
I was thinking the same thing, honestly. Yeah. I would have loved him actually holding a whole plate of beignets.
Yeah, like, especially with Charlotte being front and center, welcoming us. Have them mirrored. Have Charlotte on the left, Big Daddy on the right, and then have Eudora, which is Tiana's mom, and on the right have Naveen's parents. You have the child and the parents, and that would make sense because they're mirrored, right? And then you have the party with Tiana being front and center. It doesn't take away from Tiana, but that makes it perfect. That's what we should have, you know? So it's like, am I going to be thinking about that when I'm going through the finale? Probably not. But when I look at these attractions, again, this is Walt Disney Imagineering. This is the gold standard. These parks are not cheap. This stuff has to be the standard, right? I think that's something that's a miss. But this finale, This finale is ridiculous. I'm not trying to take away from the finale. Like,
Yeah.
this finale is near perfect, like I said. And I posted about this earlier, but I want to read off what I wrote. So I was watching a POV. I picked up on one of the most subtle, I don't even know if it's intentional, quite honestly. I'm going to ask the team. But in the song, there's the song is named Special Spice for those of you who don't know. And in the song, Tiana sings, "Let's not waste any more time doubting what's inside, like what's inside of us, believing in us."
Right.
Anyone can sing the song. So like, believe in yourself. Anyone can do this, right? Which I think is awesome from PJ Morton to kind of include that like deep meaning, which in it also flows perfectly. Like the lyrics flow, like the beat that he did.
And that's quintessential Disney right there, you know?
Especially this ride, because what it stands for, it's an inclusive story. That's why they did this. But if you guys go to my Twitter, Drew Disney Dude, I'll give myself the little shout out for this. I posted the video because when she says what's inside, the show programmers of this animatronic, she does the most simple but beautiful welcome motion, and her hand moves inward. And while she says this, she's looking directly at Louis the alligator. And what happened in The Princess and the Frog? Louis doubted himself because he's an alligator musician, and he wasn't accepted because of that, obviously. We remember that scene where they're on the boat shooting at him, right? Yeah. But now in the ride, he is the conductor of the Bayou Community Band. So he no longer has to worry about who he wants to be as an alligator who loves music, right? And that's told so simply through one hand motion and the fact that those animatronics make eye contact. I would say that I will probably be the only person who would ever notice that, quite honestly. I don't know if this would have ever been picked up on if I didn't post about it.
And I'm glad you did, because that would change it for me.
Like, this is my tweet. I wrote the longest tweet about this, like 8 paragraphs. I went into full detail here, yeah. But like I said, her movements perfectly align with the lyrics as her hand moves inward. This is undoubtedly a full circle moment, because in the finale, Louis is conducting the band. He goes from wanting to play a trumpet to now conducting an entire band of critters who are like him. There's deeper messages here if you really look at it, and it's so beautiful if you just go into it with an open mind. And like we've talked about, this entire ride is a next chapter story, but this finale is the current conclusion we have to Tiana and Louis's stories. So from the movie, right, Tiana and Louis just getting to know each other, and then at the end of the movie, Louis performs at Tiana's palace. Now they're here together, performing together at their own celebration. And like, if you really, really dig into this, if you dig a little deeper into the story, if you dig a little deeper into this story, I that's just one thing that I picked up on in one day. What else is there here? You know what I mean? But that, like, if you guys go to my Twitter, please read that, because I spent like 45 minutes on that post. I'm like, I'm going to get this post right. But just one simple hand motion and 2 animatronics making eye contact represents years and years worth of work from thousands of people, and that's so freaking cool to me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's phenomenal.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I have to say, with the ending, like in the very beginning concept of, you know, what I thought this finale was going to be, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they have in Splash Mountain, they have the riverboat with all the clucking chickens and everything. And I thought, okay, well, they'll take probably that boat and kind of spice it up a bit, no pun intended, and add...
Yeah, give it some special spice.
Yes, and add like the characters on there and everything. But the more that, after seeing what the actual finale scene looks like, I'm glad that they didn't do that, because now looking at what it is now, I would have felt that would have been a cop-out. That's like, okay, we're just going to take a scene that previously was in Splash Mountain, and we're just going to utilize it and stick them on a boat and call it a day. Yep. I love how they literally transformed the finale for Splash into Tiana's, where it even gives you a different force perspective, because of where the boat was positioned is not where these characters are positioned in Tiana. So it honestly makes you feel like, rather than you're watching it, you're going through it.
Yes, it feels very intimate. Not to cut you off, but I wanted to add to that point, because it's a fantastic point. I think that, like you said, when Splash Mountain closed 2 years or a year and a half ago and a year at Disneyland, if you were to poll audiences and say, would you like for Disney to reuse this showboat because of how iconic it is and put the Tiana characters on it, I would say the overwhelming majority would have said yes, without knowing what they were cooking, so to say, with this finale. This finale, like you said, George, it is so damn good. And like you said, like even like the little edge of the finale, it's like it's the back of their house, so it comes up to the water. And the frogs, because the frogs had just hopped out of the water, they're the closest ones to the edge of the staircase, like right here. So it's like, even I literally just thought of that. That's why the frogs are there, because they just hopped out of the water. That's why they're the closest on the edge. But like, every critter is here. All the characters in it we know and love are here. I mean, even on the screen, but that, like we talked about, that's so close to being perfect. The song, it's like, as you turn the corner, you can hear it going, and you just want to get into that scene. Like, the 10 seconds it takes for your boat to go down that little hill, it takes too long because you can hear the song. And the song is such a masterpiece. And they took this is something that they had talked about in articles that I'd read about for months, but PJ was like, it's not just a song, it's a song that has to work with a ride when you've got a log coming in every 15 seconds.
Right.
So this song is 2 minutes and 41 seconds long, but I believe there's only a 51-second section of the song that plays on the ride to make it fit. And they took the cream of the crop of this song, the perfect section, the perfect finale. It is so good. I could live in that scene, like I said, but this attraction, in my opinion, it's worth going on just for that 30 seconds in that finale. There was so much love and attention poured into just that. It's so good.
That's incredible. I want to touch upon too, Drew, because we talked about, they did a sequel attraction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was something that was it's based on the movie, but the characters and what have you, but it's not like a book report, as I call it, right?
Yes.
And
kind of
and
like
that,
Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey over in Tokyo Disney Sea, so to say. It's like a polar. It has the same technology, but it's a polar opposite direction. Exactly.
And that's been getting, that element of it has been getting a lot of criticism from fans, right? But it's like, here's the thing, and I'm really curious of your take on this. It's not the first time they've kind of done this. I mean, I was talking to George about this, where like even like Star Tours.
Yeah.
There's no Luke Skywalker in that. I mean, it was a whole new idea. The Star Speeder 3000, the whole thing. It was kind of like a Tiana's in a way, where they took the universe or the IP and they sort of crafted their own story around it, and it worked. And Star Tours is one of the most iconic attractions to this day still. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that? I mean, should they have maybe done the book report, or do you prefer how they went about it with the sequel?
Yeah. So I'll come back to like the start of my thoughts on this. So I love movies. I go to Disney Springs AMC all the time with my friends to go into that Dolby Theater. We love movies. The storytelling in movies is incredible. I'll also tie this into the POV, right? When you go to a movie, when you review something on Rotten Tomatoes, when do you do that review? After you see the movie.
Right.
What have we seen with this? Review before. Enough said, right?
Right.
You can't review a movie without seeing it with your own eyes. So why would you review an attraction that is meant to be seen in person with your eyes?
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. You were asking me about the next chapter story. So I briefly touched on this earlier. The reason why it ties into the movie. If I want to see a movie, I can go watch the damn movie. I don't want to be, it's like, is it one thing to see it retold with physical sets and animatronics? Yes. But you can still do that with the next chapter story. So why wouldn't I want that story expanded? And like we talked about the Q, this radio show, right? We are seeing Tiana's business. We are seeing her test kitchen. There's beignets, there's paperwork, there's employee banners, like aprons, calendars. It feels like you are at her business. And when we were talking earlier, kind of like about this co-op thing being like over the top, no, it feels like a real business. Like I feel like I've just walked into a factory and I'm seeing the behind the scenes. There's just no one here. We are the people. Like it feels very natural.
Cool.
And they did a fantastic job with that. So for the Q, it's not over the top. The thing with the Q is it's actually heavily relying on the radio show, which has absolutely nothing to do with the co-op. It's literally just New Orleans music and music from the movie. Perfect job there. And it's 90 minutes worth. So you're never going to hear the full thing. But this is where it comes into the attraction. So Ted Robledo, the creative director, who I've met a couple times, like I've talked about, this dude is so freaking chill. Like he's not a suit. He's just Ted. He's like, yeah, he's just there. Like he's passionate about what he does. He's talented. He will talk to you. He's a real guy. And I know that because I've met him now. I can say that confidently. He's exactly who I thought it would be. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, especially because he worked on my now favorite ride. He recently did an interview with Lou Mangello, Lou Mangello is one of the veterans of the Disney community that I've looked up to for a while. Ted said that because he is one of the older batches of Imagineers who got to go to Epcot when it first opened, that those original stories, Figment, Epcot in 1982, right? Horizons, World of Motion, all of that originality. He even mentioned the Country Bear Jamboree. He said he wanted to use Tiana's Bayou Adventure because of it being a next chapter story to bring originality into it. And that's exactly why we have over 20 original characters for this ride. That's exactly why we have a new outfit for Tiana.
And isn't that what people are, forgive me, bitching and complaining about? That they're saying they would want some non-IP original content.
Yes.
Okay, well, you got some original content.
Exactly.
So
that is why I have been so excited for this attraction, because it's the perfect recipe. If we're talking about Tiana, it is the perfect recipe of taking a beloved character in Princess Tiana, right? Someone who has needed an attraction, right, for that representation. It's a fantastic character. And you're also getting so much originality, which is what Walt Disney Imagineering has done best for 70 years, in one ride with over 40 animatronics in an original song. What is there not to love?
Yeah, exactly.
Please tell me what is there not to love. That's what I asked these people, right? And these people haven't even been on the ride, so you can't form an opinion before you see the movie, right? And this is a movie in a sense, but you're experiencing it in person, and there's nothing more beautiful than that, in my eyes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's one. And to kind of circle back to the video that's getting ratioed, and that's kind of where I have an issue with that, because I feel like it's being review bombed by people that are kind of made up their mind. Oh, we don't like this.
It's being set up to fail.
Yes. And the craziest thing, I know we've talked about it, but that's because of what Disney did. And I never thought that the company that was pouring the time and money into this ride would be the ones that caused the backlash, even more than what was already happening. And that's what makes me so sad, is now that I've gotten to know this project team, some of them pretty personally at this point, I know exactly what they were going for. I've seen the visions, and I've now seen the ride. And like we've talked about, people are bitching and complaining about IP. But when you get an IP and it's so beautifully blended with originality, and the creative director, it's not like it's a coincidence. He's literally saying that his visits to Epcot in 1982, which in the community is so loved, right? Like everyone praises Epcot like it was perfect in the 80s. I wasn't born then. I don't know. I'm not going to form an opinion on it. Would I love to go on the original journey into imagination? Absolutely. But I never got to go on it. But when he's saying that because of his visits to Epcot in 1982, were so good that he wanted to bring 17, 18, 19, 20 original characters into this ride.
The inspiration behind it.
Yeah, that's exactly what people want, right? But no one talks about that. So what do people want? I don't know what they want anymore. None of it makes any sense.
I don't even think they know what they want.
It seems like it's all BS at this point, quite honestly. And that's why I get so passionate about this ride. It's because, like I talked about you guys when we first started recording, this gives me a chance to actually talk about it. People just see me at Magic Kingdom taking pictures and sharing updates, but that's because I know that that's what people want. I know that that's what's going to get a reaction. If I spend hours out of my day, I'm going to want my stuff to get engagement, because why would I go over there just to waste time, right?
Right, exactly.
I want to share positive info that's going to get a reaction, so it's a win-win for me as a creator and also people that I can provide positive information to. But when it turns into people always saying, oh, we want this, we want that, but then Disney gives us an original outfit for Tiana, multiple, right? Her adventure outfit and her finale gown, an original song, and in an original attraction that's not only an original attraction, but it's quite literally Splash Mountain 2.0. Splash Mountain was, like we talked about, a critter journey with music.
Right.
This is a critter journey with music, but it's even more recognizable for the kids.
And I think it's great how you had mentioned, like with the inspiration, like behind the Imagination Pavilion. If you go back to all those classic attractions with, bless his heart, Richard Sherman and his brother with One Little Spark, and the Carousel of Progress with Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, classic songs, but they were original to that attraction. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we got with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We got a brand new original song.
Original songs are so important. It's funny because my top two favorite rides, Tiana now number 1, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway number 2.
And they both have two original songs.
Original songs. And it's funny because Sharita Carter was the producer of both. So I think that I just love Sharita Carter at this point. And I met her too. I walked up to her and I'm like, she's like, oh, Drew, I know you, but I don't know you. And she's so, Sharita embodies happiness, like where you just want to give the woman a hug. Like, you don't have to know a single thing about her. She was just so sweet. And she's like, I don't have a lot of time. I just really want to see the sign and see what it's like with the walls down. I got to go backstage, but thank you. And getting to, like, I met her very briefly on Runaway Railway opening day, but that was over 4 years ago. And I was also looking up to her. Now I'm looking down on her because I've grown up. But I said to her, I can only imagine, this was 4 years ago. I said, I can only imagine how much these attractions are like to work on. And I'll never forget it. She looked me in the eye. She said, they're a labor of love. And I'll never forget that. It was so simple, but it was so effective. She just has a nice way with words. But to get to see her again over 4 years later, let alone with Tiana's, because it wasn't announced then. That was 3 months before it even got announced, and the world got shut down and everything happened. But But to get to see her now and just to know that like she produced my 2 favorite rides is so cool, and I'd love to get to talk to them more. But kind of just like I don't even know how I started talking about this. But I kind of just have been ranting this entire time.
Welcome to Orange Grove 55.
I'll be back on for many more episodes. You guys are great.
Oh, absolutely. And Mickey Minnie's, I mean, that's a beautiful attraction too. I mean, you know, she knocked it out of the park with that one. I love that ride.
I'll notice with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway and Tiana's, I try to view life as happy as possible. Look for the glass is half full, not a half empty. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is a giant happy ride. The entire thing.
How could you not smile? Like the second you go through the tunnel into the park and you see the sun, and it's like you have to.
It feels like you've stepped inside of a cartoon. It's so happy. And whenever people ask me why do you like Runaway Railway, it's so screen heavy. Again, they told us that from the beginning. It's going to be flat when you're inside of a cartoon. It's 2.5D. So I knew what my expectations were, and the screens are used because it's appropriate. That's why the animatronics are like half with the Mickey and Minnie, because they're 2.5D.
And that's really. Go ahead, George, and then I'll.
Really quick, OG, hold your thought. But being now that we know that Drew loves Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, you got to do the drop.
Yeah.
I got it. Oh yeah, I do. I have a.
Well, I have a Runaway Railway sign right in front of me.
I got 2 drops. I got.
Nothing can stop us now.
And then I also got.
Oh no! I must have written that.
Love it. But I'm glad you mentioned the screens being appropriate. We've touched upon that a lot on the channel, right, George? Like where fans kind of get into this thing where it's like, you know, screens bad. Okay.
Quite honestly, though,
they're not right.
What Universal kind of. I love Universal now. Universal Creative is top tier. They are, in my opinion, what Universal Creative is doing now in this current era is on the same level of Walt Disney Imagineering. What we are seeing, not to talk about Epic Universe, but everyone knows Epic Universe is going to be quite literally epic, right? Yes. But back years ago, Universal, I quite honestly think is why people to this day still have a negative connotation with screens.
That I agree.
Because of stuff like Transformers. Like you look at Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is loved. But I look at Transformers, and I've been on it before, and I'm like, what is this, right? It's just a screen. And I can understand people looking at Mickey's and Minnie's Runaway Railway saying it's just all screens. But that is the only way to convey stepping inside of a cartoon. Exactly. And even though it is a screen-heavy attraction, you are still in a physical environment with the screens around you rather than staring at a screen like on Transformers.
But it's also to the fact, too, to Sharita Carter's credit, it's how she implements the screens. It's not just basically, I'm trying to find the right words for it. Like when you watch a screen at Universal, it feels like you're actually just watching it, as you were saying.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Where it's like,
but the way Sharita Carter adds the screens to the physical effects, it gives it that pop.
Yeah, and you're still like on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. You are in a physical scene. You're in that carnival, right? Your ride vehicles are there. It is nearly 360 immersion in every single scene, right? But the screens are around you. You're not watching a screen. The screens are telling the story. Whereas on Transformers, it's like you're watching a movie, but you're in a ride vehicle, so to say. Whereas on Runaway Railway, you're moving through these worlds, but the worlds are made up of screens and hand-painted sets. And that's why I adore it, because it's done right. It's not that I'm anti-screen. I'm anti not being used correctly.
Thank you. Why not utilize if we have all these
that needs to be put on a t-shirt.
It does.
Should we get some Drew merchandise? I'm not anti-screen. I'm anti not used correctly or whatever I said.
Right across the front, you know.
Mic drop, boom. All right, I'm gonna throw this off the desk. Goodbye, Mike.
But it's like that's the thing. We have all these tools in our toolbox. It's why
and
not
that's even what Sharita has said. They're tried and true techniques. Right. And like that's the thing is like I don't think a lot of people realize that Sharita led the Scenic Illusion group, which is what led to the development of Runaway Railway. Once the concept of Runaway Railway came up, the reason she was chosen as the producer to work with Kevin Rafferty, who Kevin Rafferty is my all-time favorite Imagineer for what it's worth. For those of you who don't know, Kevin has done Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror, Cars Land, Muppet Vision, and that's just a few of them. Toy Story Mania.
And to think that he started out as a dishwasher over at the Plaza.
Kevin is. We could literally talk all night. When you guys said we were going to be here for 9.5 hours, maybe we really are going to be. But like, man, but like coming back to Sharita, the reason why I like her is because she was chosen as the producer of Runaway Railway because of her talents being that leader of the Scenic Illusion group, right? And she got to use her knowledge and her talents. And that led to Tiana's. If she wasn't the producer on Runaway Railway, she would not have been the producer on Tiana's.
And there's people.
If she wasn't. I'm sorry, I'm not to cut you off.
No,
if she
go
wasn't
for
the producer on Tiana's, she would have never chosen Ted Robledo to be the creative director. And if she never chose Ted Robledo to be the creative director, we would have never gotten this next chapter story with the Originality.
So it's that domino effect.
Always, yes, and that's why like us talking about Runaway Railway is relevant, because that's what got her this, and that's what brought Ted on board. Like if you look back to the original announcements of Tiana's, Ted was never mentioned because he wasn't on the team yet. Sharita was the first person. And I believe that in her role as a producer is to choose who she wants on her team. I believe that she chose Ted because she has liked what Ted's done. And for what it's worth, Ted did enchant the Tale of Beauty and the Beast in Tokyo. One of the best rides in the world.
Nice.
Okay. Interesting.
So it's like, if this didn't happen, this doesn't happen. If that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. If that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, and so on and so forth. But that's why when people are like, it's just a Disney ride, I'm like, shut up. No, it's not. No, it's not.
No, I take that back. That needs to be put on a T-shirt.
Exactly.
But I will say,
hey, Disney PR, you guys are not seeing this.
But I will say about Sharita is there are people out there that have a job to just make the money to pay the bills. Then there's the people out there that have a job because it's what they love to do. It's what they're passionate about. Yeah. When I look at her, I see her as she loves what she does because it's in her core. Yeah. And I've never met her before. I would love to literally sit down with her. And
you guys would love to meet her. I really hope that I know that they'll be out there. It's like when I first met Ted, I'm like, where's Sharita? Where's John Dennis? John Dennis did all the music. I'm like, where? He's like, they'll be out here. Sure enough, I met her. But I really hope with Disneyland, like now that's another thing we haven't even talked about. Now that Walt Disney World is done, this project team can go full force ahead on Disneyland. And that's why I think it's going to open in October at Disneyland, is because not only can they focus on Disneyland 100%, but that's where the Imagineering offices are. Disneyland is in the backyard of Glendale. So they have more resources out there, right? With Bob Iger, Josh D'Amaro, any of the Imagineers, any of the creative talent they need to get Disneyland's to the finish line. And I think that they will want Disneyland's open in October. October 4th is a Friday for what it's worth. And October 1st is the start of the new fiscal year. Like we could talk about that for hours too. But I think that Disneyland is going to open in October at this rate, early October, because they're done here.
So my question
that explains it. OG, grab your tent and sleeping bag because we're gonna be camping out looking for him.
I expect you guys to send me a picture on Twitter with Sharita and Ted, and I'll be like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yes, yes. Well, I was actually gonna ask you, Drew. So when are you moving to California?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I need to get on the phone with some people and be like, hey guys, if you guys want me to document this thing, I'll happily go stay in the Grand Californian for a few days if you want to hook me up. I'm serious. I'm actually gonna try to have some conversations here soon to try to get some stuff going for Disneyland.
And it's a shame because I really wanted to be down there for the opening not the opening, but the early previews for Tiana's. But I'm going to try again for Disneyland. Hopefully it'll be a better experience.
And I think that just like the uniqueness of Disneyland, like the flume at Disneyland moves much faster in the way the scenes are staged. I think that Disneyland's could be the superior. I never thought I would say this. I thought that Walt Disney World was going to be the flagship version, so to say.
Right.
I could see Disneyland's being the flagship version if their staging choices are forced to be different because it's a different attraction.
Well, and that's that's actually what I was going to ask you, because the building structure interior is completely different from Walt Disney World. Yeah. This would force the Imagineers to have some different placements, but could it actually be to their benefit where it could be more effective?
Yeah, it could actually. I think the thing that like I said, it feels natural, like you're going down a bayou, but I can understand the people not liking where you were just floating and there's just fireflies and music. Like there are some people who want something to look at the entire time, and I totally understand that because that's what Splash Mountain was. So when you're in that same environment, you're going to expect that for some people. I get that. But if those issues are addressed either by the time Disneyland's opens, like last minute fixes, because these could be last minute fixes. These aren't major things. This attraction at its core is a gem. I truly love it. Like I said, it's just minor things like these little animatronics or the signage, very minimal things that all could be fixed during its winter refurbishment when it goes down eventually. Like it's probably not going to close in January because it's just open and everything's brand new. But in, let's say, December of 2025, when it goes down for its first refurbishment, they could fix these things, but they could also fix those now at Disneyland just before it opens. And coming back to Runaway Railway again, I've been on Runaway Railway almost 300 times. I don't know if you guys know that. This thing, that was my baby. And back in it was December of 2020. That's when I first found out that new scene was happening at Disneyland, like that tunnel with Goofy. That's because at the time, the Disneyland project team for Runway Railway was out there. And at the time, all the not the Imagineers, all the cast members of Runway Railway knew me, and they introduced me to the Disneyland project team. And they were like, yeah, we have a little bit of space at Disneyland for that new scene, and that's why we're here to walk it. So they could do that for Tiana's right now and make those adjustments for Disneyland, which would be perfect. And we saw that happen with Runway Railway. Look at how good it turned out, right? But I saw that happen in real time. And that, hopefully, as we're recording this, is already being discussed. That's what I hope.
Hopefully. Now, I do want to touch upon before we go today, Drew. I do want to touch upon the okay, because George and I did a video about the breakdown.
It's crazy. We've been talking for 2 hours, and it feels like it's been 45 minutes. It just goes to show when you're talking about something passionate that you care about with people that you get along with. It's like we've been talking for the length of a movie, and it does not feel like that.
Oh, not at all. And exactly.
It's constantly like that for us. Like when we have guests on that we just engage in the conversation, and it's like, yeah, we look at the time and we're like, wow,
I literally just look down and I'm like, it's 10:31. Damn. It's funny because like I was exhausted today and I felt out. Like when I first got on with you guys before we started recording, I told you guys I was exhausted, and I'm sorry if I feel out of it. But just from talking to you guys about the ride that I love so much, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sleep tonight now because like I'm awake now.
Well, 2 done, 7.5 to go. So
all right, let me get some Uber Eats from the Bayou real quick.
You know? so we did a video. It dropped today about the breakdowns, right? The soft opens, the previews, and they've been having, like you were saying in the beginning.
I'm glad you mentioned this. Finish your thought, but I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah, and so I was on this video. I was defending it. I was like, okay, you know, these are previews. It's normal. The fire alarm stuff. We saw similar stuff happen with like Super Nintendo World out here in California. My question to you, Drew, because you're much more knowledgeable with Tiana's and this whole.
Okay, well, give yourself some credit. You guys know what you're talking about. I don't want to ever come across as like I'm better because I follow this attraction so closely. But
I'll go for it. I do it all the
time. The one thing I will say is I do have the best understanding of this attraction as a guest, at least, because the project team can't talk about this sensitive stuff. So I appreciate.
Well, I'm glad you touched upon a lot of in-depth stuff that you personally noticed, because now when I go on it, I'm going to be looking at that finale scene, looking at Tiana,
yes,
with the hand movements and everything. I would never think to look at that. Yep. But because you brought it to our attention, now I'm going to be looking after.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy is like I've had people walk up to me and they're like one of my friends, Kevin, yesterday. He went on the ride. He's like, dude, I was against this thing. The only reason I'm excited to be here today is because I've been watching your stuff. And I was like, damn, man, that hits hard. Like me doing what I love makes you excited, and I just met you for the first time like 3 weeks ago. Like that's just crazy to me. I don't know.
Isn't that
never
amazing?
Expected it to reach like it has. It's been pretty crazy.
Isn't it amazing the impact that impact, you know, from your passion for this project and how that passion has reverberated out.
Yeah.
It must feel really good, man. It must feel really, really good.
It really
good,
does.
You know?
And like there was I met a guy last night named Andy, and he was on the original Disney Park social media team. And I had followed him when they first launched it back in 2021. And I was like, yeah, man, it's a pleasure to meet you. He's like, oh yeah, I've seen your Tiana stuff. I'm like, you have? Like someone that I want to meet knows me? Like crazy. But to your point about the breakdowns, I'm assuming you wanted to ask me what my thoughts are on that. And
well, yeah, I was saying it's normal. Like with this, we shouldn't be concerned. But I mean, I'm curious what you think about it. Is it normal?
Okay, so I have been thinking. So I'll start back by saying this attraction started ride testing with the Imagineers on March 22nd. I got the first ever video of the first ever group of Imagineers coming down the drop, and that is the video that I was laying in my bed about months ago saying, I really hope I get this because it's such a monumental archival thing to look back at. The thing is, there's so many things that people don't think about, and I will happily talk about it. So when guests start to experience this attraction, to put this in nice terms, people aren't the smartest and they don't move quickly, right? Every single second that these logs are slowed down to where they are not at 100% efficiency, to where basically the cast member pushes the button and that log launches when there's a difference between when the cast member dispatches the log when it's ready to, if the log is ready, versus people slowing down the cast member, if that makes sense. There is a spacing of these logs to where they can go, like we've talked about, at about 15 seconds, and that is considered 100% efficiency. When people start to slow down these logs, that's where issues happen. From March 22nd Up until May 30th, it had only been the project team, maybe a few logs. So these Imagineers are going to understand to get in these logs immediately, pull on down that lap bar, and they have been running at 100% efficiency. When I'm saying that they are running at 100% efficiency, that's to the point where there is a sensor at the bottom of the 50-foot plunge. These logs haven't even been clearing that sensor to the point where they've been stopping at the top during ride testing, like a little pause, and then dropping because they're going perfectly. So whenever they are running at 100% efficiency, there's about a 3-second gap from when the log reaches its peak to when it's cleared to go down. Once you start incorporating people into these logs, and they have to pull, this is the reason why this is how stupid people are. They changed the color of the foam on the lap bar from brown to orange, so people see that there's a bar there.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Yeah. Like if you look at the old Splash Mountain lap bars, they were gray. And I vividly remember on Splash Mountain, the cast members saying, hey, pull down on your bar. We need to send you before our ride breaks. With Tiana's, they actually changed the foam around the bar to orange. So when you sit down, people are like, oh, I need to pull down on this. This is where we're at.
So basically, dispatch operations could actually shut the whole entire ride down.
I'll get to that more. So what happens is on May 30th, when the walls came down, the reason the walls came down on May 30th is because that was their first promotional B-roll shoot day. They had actors out and they are filming reactions for commercials, which those commercials are now being edited. But that's when the ride started having issues, is when you start putting people in these logs. Now, I do say that there is some, not necessarily blame, but there should have been thought that was put into this to test the attraction not at 100% efficiency before now, because now it's too late. And now the attraction is shutting down for 8 hours a day, and we're getting even more negative PR. If they had...
Just like what they did with the POV video.
Exactly. The thing is, I forgot, I'm trying to think of what I was going to say. When they're testing it at 100% efficiency... Oh, yeah, yes, this is what I was going to say. So the thing with Tiana's is everything in this ride, like we've talked about, is timed to the logs. When these computers and these sensors have been for 2 months now going at 100%, there's been zero stress put on them. Every single sensor, computer, and line of code, song has been running perfectly because there's no people in the logs. They're just sent out of the load station. So every 15 seconds, Lewis has been timed. But right now, these logs, because there's people on them, there's absolutely zero consistency to how when a log is going to come. If I was to go on the ride right now with my friends in a log of 8, and we pull down on our lap bars, we would not be able to replicate how long it takes for us to all sit down and have a log dispatched, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that means that when these logs are going down the bayou, these sensors, for the first time, are being put under pressure to say, oh, hey, a log's here. Lewis, you need to talk now. And while Lewis is talking, 100 feet ahead, Tiana needs to talk now. And in the finale, Mama Odie needs to talk now. This is the first time that these sensors have had pressure put on, like a stress test, so to speak.
Right.
So my personal theory is that it's not the ride system that's the problem. The ride system's fine because since it started, the ride system started testing overnight in January. We didn't see that during park hours till February. But the ride system has had absolutely zero issues. I only saw this thing go down twice for technical difficulties in about 45 visits in 2 months. So it was running flawlessly, but that's because it was at 100% efficiency. Now we see people get on the logs and the computers, right? The computers talking to the sensors for the show to be activated. I believe that the stress of that, because it's unique, so to say, like the intervals between each log is unique. I believe that stress is causing stuff to not communicate, which is causing the ride to have to be shut down. Because if these computers think something is happening, like someone walking on the track, so to say, when someone's not, who knows like what the exact issue is. But if there is something that makes the computer think that something is happening when it's not and everything is fine, even if the ride is 100% safe, which it is, if that computer thinks it's not, they still have to shut it down and evacuate it and reset it. And whatever that issue is right now, these downtimes are averaging around 3 hours right now. It is bad. Really, really bad. So, like I said, I'm not certain on that, but I have a pretty damn good understanding of these rides. And after seeing it operate nearly perfectly for 2 months, even with the Imagineers on them, like I've seen Ted and Sharita go by 5 times in one night over the course of 3 hours, and it never went down. But that's when no one was on the logs. And I don't think it's a coincidence that now that we're seeing people put on the logs and these logs being dispatched instead of every 15 seconds, one's 35, one's 43, one's 28, right? Then those sensors have to react to that. And right now they're not communicating. And the same exact thing happened with Frozen Ever After when it opened. I called Frozen Ever After Frozen Ever Disaster. If you guys if you look at articles from 2016 and summer of 2016, when Frozen Ever After barely, I don't expect you guys to remember this, but Frozen Ever After, its opening day was announced and it was barely promoted. There was no previews. That's because it was suffering so hard from technical issues. Unfortunately, we're seeing the same thing happen with Tiana right now, and I believe it's because of that same issue with the computers not communicating. And it's really unfortunate because I think that within the last couple of days, they kind of had the time. I don't know if they've really had the time to realize that, this is like, it's going to take some time for these computers to start to like kind of mature in, or like kind of like if you're breaking in a baseball glove and then it's easy to catch the ball. It's almost like these computers have to be broken into the logs being dispatched at the unique intervals. But man, I mean, we've seen what happened with Rise of the Resistance, right? It's reliable now, but it took a while. Frozen Ever After, right? I think about Frozen because it's a log ride and it's similar with like the stuff being timed with the sensors. Tiana's could have problems for a while, and that would not be good because it opens in 24 days. The media event is in 6 days. Previews are already happening now. It's like,
wow.
And I don't want to pretend I know for sure. Like, I've been told things, but I'm not going to repeat that because I don't know if it's true and it's private,
Right.
But my 100% personal take on it is it's the sensors not communicating, because this is the first time they have been tested under that. And if the Imagineering team had tested that, or the test and adjust team had tested that, saying, hey, let's wait to send a log and see what happens when they back up a little bit, and then it broke down, and then they could have bit it in the butt before now, maybe that would have fixed it. But it's really unfortunate to see an attraction already that has had so much negativity around it, and then just have the operational nightmare happen. It's like, man, because that's gonna overshadow everything, even when it's such a beautiful ride.
Yeah, no, it is. It's unfortunate. It's like what you were saying, George. It's like the POV situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's these kind of like these self-inflicted wounds,
basically simple fixes before they even happen, and it's like it's like an afterthought. Like,
yeah, because it's like I don't even know if I was an Imagineer on the ride. Well, they're just testing it to make sure everything's working. Are they going to have the thought? Like, I would imagine that like they would have to have the thought to say, oh, is this stuff going to work? Because they've made the creative decision to have us be a part of the story and have every animatronic address us, and it makes the ride much better. I love that Tiana looks you in the eye. I love that Lewis waves his, like, there's a lot of motions that they make that, like, even in the first scene, right, when you see Tiana after the Zydeco critters, her emotion, it looks like she's waving you in. Like, right. I think that there was intention put into that. And I love that this is not a book report ride. Like you said, I love that we feel that we are a part of this story. But if that is going to affect this ride for months because that was not tested or whatever the reason is, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I think I know. It only makes sense, right? Because when I was there for 2 months, over 45 times. And when I saw them going consistently and there was no issues, I was like, oh, we're good. And then May 30th rolls around and it's down for 4 hours, and it's been down for 4 hours a day since. The only outlier is the people. So what else could it be? You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. That unknown factor with the people.
So I have to ask this. This is really bad. So when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens up in Disneyland, you said that it was a nightmare right now, operations wise, and you're saying that it would kind of open in October, which would be before the holiday season. So, and you said if the same happenings happen out there as it does out here, and you said it's a nightmare, would that make it the nightmare before Christmas?
Yeah, pretty much.
We could call that Tiana's Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, that would be an unintentional overlay. There you go. No complaining. We got a Christmas overlay, right? Yeah. You're not going on a ride necessarily, but you'll be waiting outside for 4 hours and you can't get to go on. So that would be a nightmare.
Love it. Drew, had a blast talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, man, I think we really covered everything. We talked about like so much more than I would have thought, but like I said at the beginning, just being able to like kind of like open up and like get my mind, like my mind never turns off. Like, I'm sure you guys have kind of picked up on like who I am. Like, I just am going, like, I think at a very high level, I think at a very deep level. I try to look at everything in the big picture so I can know what I'm talking about, because I never want to talk about something as fact if I don't think it's a fact or know it's a fact. Like, I want to be a source. Like, I want someone to say, oh, Drew said it, it's true. That's what I take pride in that.
Nice, yeah.
So just to be able to talk about this has been awesome. And it's also cool that like I've been on it now. It's no longer this mystery. Like, I have experienced it with my own eyes twice during the day and the night, and I've heard the radio show. I've met the project team. I have such a broad understanding of it, and like we've talked about, just like the originality and the IP and like the breakdowns, and like just being able to talk about all of that. that's what I've been wanting to talk about. So
And-
you give me that opportunity.
Absolutely, and I love your passion for the
I appreciate it,
attraction
man.
and just for the parks in general and Disney stuff. Amazing time, and Drew, you're always welcome back.
Yeah, for sure. We got to. I hope that we get to go on to Disneyland in October. Hopefully, that's the goal.
Yes.
I want to look back on this conversation and be like, oh yeah, because like I will say I got the opening time frame 100% spot on for Walt Disney World. So many people were saying, oh, this isn't open on Juneteenth, and I was like, no, it's opening on June 28th at the earliest, and it opened on June 28th, and I was like, because like I literally made a tweet about that. It was seen by like 50,000 people at like my opening time frame, and I was very nervous. Like, even though in that tweet I said that this is pure speculation, I know that people are going to take it as fact. But it worked out because it opened on June. It's opening on June 28th. But I hope that we look back at this and it opens around October 4th, around there, and we get to go on it together. That would be an absolute blast. And just like for me to be able to, like, I would be willing to film your guys' reactions and just kind of like look back at this conversation and being like, oh yeah, this is like a full circle moment for us with an attraction that has so many full circle moments.
Would love
That would
it.
be
Would
awesome.
absolutely love it.
Which actually, because I am planning on coming out sometime in October, so
That would be super cool, man.
So
in
be
my
awesome.
opinion, I will put this on the record because sometimes I'll do this just to be like, oh yeah, I said that. In my opinion, it would be perfect if Disneyland's opens on October 1st or October 4th. October 1st, because that's the day of their new fiscal year, and they always will base things around the fiscal year because it looks great on the shareholders' reports. But October 4th is a Friday. So we saw Tron Light Cycle Run open on April 1st of 2023 was the start of Disney's new fiscal year, but Tron opened on April 4th because it was, I don't know if it was a Friday, but they'll do things on certain days even if it's a little bit later. So I hope it opens around, like, I was thinking like maybe it opens on November 22nd, like right before that last Friday before Thanksgiving, because ours is opening on the Friday before 4th of July. But November, that gets into when it's cold. And that's also after Halloween, and that's also after the Thanksgiving crowds have kind of arrived. And I don't think that they would want those Thanksgiving crowds mixed in with the new ride opening. So if you get the ride opening out of the way, and then it's open capacity-wise with Haunted Mansion, if they bring back Haunted Mansion and Tiana's right before Halloween into the holidays, it'd be perfect. So I really hope.
Could there be a possibility that they could open it the Friday before October 1st, before the fiscal?
I think they could, yeah, because like June 30th is the last day of quarter 3 of the fiscal year for us. July 1st is the first day of quarter 4. So they're opening it 2 days before the last day of the quarter because it's a Friday and it goes into the weekend before 4th of July. So absolutely. But like I said, I really think that October is a possibility now. And coming back to, like I said earlier, the project team is done here in a few weeks. They're done. They move on. Those operational issues aren't their responsibility at that point if they were rushed, Then it's more of let's get Disneyland's open now before it's freezing cold and we have a water ride open for Thanksgiving. That wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Especially for Disneyland because, well, Disney World's, it was Splash, now Tiana's. You got wet, but Disneyland's.
You
can
get drenched. Yeah, Disneyland. This is going to be literally Tiana's Bayou Splash for Disneyland. But yeah, I really hope that it opens in October out there, just like you said, before it gets cold. Going into the holidays, just like so many people go out there for Halloween, and to have Haunted Mansion open for Halloween and have Tiana's open and to have those walkways open and have that capacity and new stuff. And it would just be so great for the park going into the holidays. And that's the perfect way to end the year at Disneyland, is to reopen Haunted Mansion, open Tiana's in October before Halloween, going into Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. I don't see a better plan. That's what I believe right now. So, and
especially more importantly, as you had mentioned, like with all those walkways reopening, that would mean Hungry Bear reopens again. Because damn it, I want my chicken sandwich.
Yeah, I really hope I can make it out there and just kind of like experiencing it with like people that I haven't met yet. Because like I know everyone out here, and it's like this is like my home away from home at this point. But like for me to go back out there, like I'll be there in August, but that'll be my first trip in 10 years. So to be able to go out there in August for D23, but then to go out there for Tiana, which is like, my baby. I have my poster right here. That would be so fun, and just to get to meet everyone and go on a unique version, because like we talked about, it's going to be different. It can't be the same. Yeah. So fingers crossed.
Well, we do have in August, right, George? We have a little something you want to tell Drew.
We
can coordinate if you can do it.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be out there long enough because you said you're going out for D23, but the weekend after D23, that Saturday, August 17th, we're doing our very first Orange Grove 55 meetup at Downtown Disney.
Damn, man! I think I come home on the 12th. Well, it gives me a reason to come back out there, and like
absolutely
having this ride, knowing it's coming, it's like I have time to prepare, and just everyone knows how attached to it I am, so I'll do everything I can to be there.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Drew, if you could, it was great having you on. You're
Yeah,
always
man,
welcome
likewise.
back to talk about the parks, Disney, and we even talk studio stuff here. So if you want to come
Yeah.
talk movies or anything, you're always
Disney
welcome.
dude talks about something besides Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Is that possible? Like I have other passions and interests. What?
But if you could remind everybody where they could find you on social media.
Yeah, so like we talked about, my Twitter is my main one, which is just Drew Disney Dude, and then everything else, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube is Drew the Disney Dude, which is like I have my name on here. So Twitter has like a character limit, so I just did Drew Disney Dude. So
Perfect. Follow Drew on all platforms. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of OG55. Comment down below with all your thoughts on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, the attraction, the show scenes, the animatronics, the operations, everything we talked about today. Comment down below. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.